A millionaire CEO walks in on the maid teaching his son piano and feels his heart stop as he falls deeply for the woman he never noticed before. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Night had already settled over the imposing Becker estate when 8-year-old Henry Becker, clad in his striped pajamas, snuck down the grand spiral staircase. The entire mansion was eerily silent, a stillness that echoed all the more in such a vast place. If anyone asked why a child was roaming around at that late hour, Henry would have shrugged and said he wanted a glass of milk or that he had a dream he couldn't shake. But the truth was simpler and more curious. He'd overheard the faint notes of a piano gently playing through the labyrinth of hallways. Henry traced the soft melody to a modest side corridor, a place rarely visited by the Beckers or their guests. Stepping quietly, he discovered the music coming from behind a half-open door. Barefoot, he peeked in, seeing the slight figure of a woman sitting at an old upright piano. She was hunched slightly, her slim hands flowing over the worn keys with a grace he had only seen on television. But this wasn't some star performer in a glittering concert hall. This was the maid, Emma, who tidied the bedrooms and polished the silverware during the day. Henry watched in wonder, the dull overhead light catching the tears glistening on Emma's cheeks. She played a gentle nocturne, something Henry couldn't name, but it was delicate, full of sadness and hope all at once. The moment felt too intimate to interrupt, yet the child's curiosity was stronger than his shyness. "You play so beautifully," he whispered. Emma's fingers froze. She spun around in alarm, bumping the piano bench. When she recognized Henry, her face went pale. In this house, employees rarely encountered the Becker heirs on an equal footing. "Mr. Henry, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you come in." Henry shook his head, stepping closer. "Please don't stop. That was so pretty." Her heart was pounding, but the child's kind eyes eased her worries. Gently, Emma let her hands fall from the keyboard. "It's just a small piece I learned when I was a girl," she explained. "I practiced on a piano at my old school. That's where I discovered music can heal wounds we can't explain." Henry hopped up onto the piano bench beside her, as if they'd known each other for years. "Will you teach me?" he asked, his voice hushed with excitement. Dad hired 3 different piano tutors, but they were all so strict and never explained why the notes mattered. You make the piano sound like a friend." Emma hesitated. She was the new maid, hired only 2 weeks ago to help with the endless chores. She had never planned on getting personal with any member of the Becker family, let alone instructing the heir in a skill that, from her perspective, was far above her social station. Yet Henry's excitement and earnestness were impossible to ignore. "Well," she began softly, "I'm not officially a tutor, but I can show you a few chords. Just promise me you'll keep it a secret." The boy nodded so enthusiastically, his messy hair flopped over his forehead. "I promise." And so Emma started to teach Henry, carefully placing his small fingers on the keys. Little by little, she guided him through the simplest sequence, praising him gently when he got it right and showing patience when he stumbled. In their quiet corner, a kind of magic awakened. The grandeur and rigid formality that characterized the Becker mansion melted away under the hush of late-night piano melodies. They both forgot about status, chores, even the absent father who rarely came home before midnight. But unbeknownst to them, far down a main hallway, a figure stood studying something else entirely. Logan Becker, Henry's father, had just returned from a grueling day of acquisitions and corporate negotiations. The lights in the foyer were dim. The staff had all gone to bed, or so he believed, until he caught the faintest echo of piano notes. For a moment, he thought it was a memory from his own childhood. Then he realized it was coming from inside his home. Confused, he trailed the sound to the old music room. Through a narrow slit between the door and the wall, he observed the scene, His son, smiling brighter than he'd smiled in months, learning piano from a young woman he barely knew by name. Emma's laughter was delicate, and Henry's laughter was pure. It was a sight Logan wasn't prepared for. His chest tightened. Logan was a man used to controlling everything, his corporation, his image, and even the philanthropic persona he carefully curated for the press. He had no illusions about the fleeting nature of loyalty in his circles. Even so, the one constant that truly mattered to him was Henry. The boy's mother had departed years ago, disliking the unyielding nature of Logan's business world, and father and son had grown somewhat distant. Logan always told himself that he was doing it all for Henry's future. Endless board meetings and strategizing. But in that moment, as he saw Henry's shy but bright grin, Logan realized how little real time he spent with the child. And there, next to the battered upright piano, was a maid who was showing more authentic kindness to his boy than he had managed in a long while. Stepping back from the door, Logan's mind whirled. His immediate reaction should have been to reprimand the maid for overstepping her job role or at least warn her not to cross boundaries. Yet something in him resisted. He caught glimpses of Emma's sincerity. She didn't appear to be taking advantage of her closeness to the Becker name. She had no clue Logan was watching. Her entire focus was on Henry, with such genuine warmth it staggered him. For a moment he wondered if Emma recognized the piece she was teaching from the boy's perspective. These simple, graceful chords were forging a bond that was intangible but clearly powerful. Logan had come in prepared to bark orders or scold someone for being out of place. Now he lingered, the tension in his shoulders dissolving into a silent, unexplainable ache. He felt an overwhelming desire to share in the scene, yet for reasons he couldn't clarify, he stayed hidden, not wanting to break whatever enchantment existed in that corner of his huge, empty house. When Henry finally bid Emma good night, he couldn't stop grinning. "Thank you," the boy said quietly as she walked him back up the stairs. I can't wait for tomorrow. Maybe we could do this again?" Emma felt a swell of conflicting emotions. She was happy to see Henry so enthusiastic, yet a wave of guilt washed over her. She wasn't hired for this, and if the Beckers discovered she'd gone beyond her duties, it could cost her the job she desperately needed. "We'll see," she replied gently, patting his hair. "You have a big day at school. Get some rest." Henry, still brimming with excitement, raced to his room. Emma remained at the foot of the hallway, feeling the hush settle over the sleeping estate. She tried to gather her composure. That's when she noticed something near the far corridor, a fleeting motion, almost like a silhouette passing behind a column. She held her breath, suspecting one of the older staff might have seen them, but the figure was gone as quickly as it had appeared. Little did she know that it was Logan Becker retreating further into the shadows, wrestling with a tangle of emotions he'd rarely allowed himself to feel: curiosity, tenderness, and an unsettling sense of protectiveness toward a maid he had barely met. He found himself quietly following her steps back to the servants' wing, making sure she got there safely, all while staying hidden and unnoticed. It was an absurd impulse, he thought. Why would the powerful CEO, the man known for building multi-million-dollar business deals, skulk in his own house, ensuring the well-being of an employee? Logan recalled how the usually reserved Henry had just displayed a happiness more genuine than anything money could buy. The recollection stirred something in the father's heart. Maybe it was guilt for the distance that had grown between them. Maybe it was a kind of hesitant gratitude toward the young woman who had, even for a moment, brightened Henry's life. But a small voice in the back of Logan's mind wondered if something else was taking root, something more personal, more dangerous given the gap in their stations. That night, neither Logan nor Emma got much sleep. Emma, in her modest room in the servants' quarters, lay staring at the ceiling, chiding herself for overstepping. "You're here to clean floors and fix the linens?" she muttered. "Don't get involved in their personal lives." She recalled Henry's earnest eyes and had to bite back tears. It was so rare to find such honest joy in a child. She pictured him perched on the bench beside her, eager to learn, and it was both heartwarming and terrifying. She needed this job. She couldn't jeopardize it. In his opulent suite, Logan tossed and turned. The swirling thoughts of Emma's gentle voice teaching Henry kept replaying. He was used to formal lessons, professional tutors. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine a scenario where a housemaid could connect with his son in ways nobody else had. The memory gnawed at him, refusing to let him slip into the oblivion of sleep. By sunrise, the entire estate was abuzz with routine. Maids dusting the antique furniture, gardeners tending the lawns, and the distant hum of the chef working away in the kitchen. Emma started her day as usual, collecting fresh linens from the laundry. She was determined to push last night's incident from her mind. She'd do her job, remain discreet, and keep interactions with Henry brief but polite. If anything, she wanted to avoid crossing paths with Logan Becker at all cost. But fate had other plans. As Emma finished placing new sheets in the upstairs guest room, she heard footsteps behind her. She spun around, prepared to greet a fellow staff member, only to freeze upon seeing Logan Becker himself standing in the doorway. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, he still had that slight, disheveled look around his eyes that suggested a restless night. Emma immediately lowered her gaze, aware that it wasn't common for Mr. Becker to engage with the maids directly, especially about anything other than specific instructions. "Good morning," Logan said quietly, his voice lacking the usual clipped formality. "I didn't mean to startle you." Emma's heart pounded. This was the first time she'd been alone with the powerful CEO, and she could practically taste the tension in the air. "No, sir. Good morning," she responded, stepping back. Silence. Logan cleared his throat, uncertain how to phrase what he felt he needed to say. He hardly recognized this aspect of himself, hesitant, almost shy. "I wanted to thank you," he finally managed, though the words came out oddly. "I heard the piano last night. My son, he seemed happy." He paused, struggling to maintain that CEO poise. "I suspect it's the first time in a while that he was genuinely excited about music." Emma blinked, stunned. She had braced for a scolding, possibly even immediate termination. Instead, Mr. Becker, renowned for his steely composure, was thanking her. "It was nothing, sir," she replied hastily. "I'm not a real piano teacher, and I apologize if I overstepped." Logan lifted a hand, as if to hush any self-accusation. "Please," he said, "I appreciate it." For a fleeting second, their eyes locked, and Emma saw a hint of vulnerability in the man who was rumored to be unstoppable in boardroom negotiations. She felt an unsettling flutter in her chest. "Sir, if you'd rather I stop—" He shook his head too quickly. No, it's fine." Another pause. He exhaled, realizing he might be giving too much away. "Just be careful not to lose sleep. Henry can be restless at night." Emma nodded, confusion swirling. "Yes, sir. Of course. Thank you." Logan seemed about to say something else, but caught himself. Instead, he offered a faint, almost shy smile, then stepped back through the doorway. As soon as he left, Emma's knees nearly buckled. She gripped the edge of the freshly made bed, her mind racing. The encounter was wholly unexpected. Kind words from a man reputed to be all business and no warmth. A man who rarely even looked staff in the eye. A man who was definitely out of her league. Downstairs, Henry was finishing breakfast with an excitement that hadn't left him since the night before. "Dad?" he asked, perking up when Logan entered the dining room. "Are you staying home longer today? We could maybe look at the piano?" Logan paused, taken aback. "You want me to—" Henry shrugged, trying to hide the quick flicker of disappointment. "No, it's just— I was hoping we could all— No, never mind, you're probably busy." Logan had to swallow the lump in his throat. For years, he'd told himself his distance was for Henry's own good, yet now, that line felt hollow. "Maybe later this evening," he offered, forcing a small smile. "If I'm home in time." Henry's face lit up, though it was tempered by the boy's cautious nature. "Really? We'll see. I've got a new teacher now," he teased in an innocent voice, "and she's really good." A swirl of emotions danced across Logan's chest at the mention of new teacher. He simply nodded, messing Henry's hair as he passed. "We'll see," he echoed, leaving to handle yet another business matter. But his mind was far from the negotiations waiting for him downtown. Instead, it kept drifting back to that quiet moment in the upstairs guest room with Emma, to the softness in her eyes, and the vivid expression of gratitude he'd felt but couldn't fully express. By mid-morning, Emma resumed her chores, trying her best not to dwell on her conversation with Mr. Becker. Yet the entire staff seemed to sense a peculiar shift in the household's energy. Murmurs traveled among them, hinting that Logan Becker appeared less stern than usual, while Henry, typically lonely and quiet, now carried a hint of unstoppable glee. Neither Emma nor Logan could foresee how dramatically their lives would change. Both carried burdens from the past, secrets they hid behind polite smiles. But their meeting, sparked by the simple notes of a piano in the quiet of night, was the beginning of something bigger than either of them knew, something that would test the boundaries of class, reputation, and the labyrinth of the heart. Sunlight flooded the Becker mansion's marble floors, reflecting in bright patches that made the corridors look almost cheerful, an unusual sight in a home where silence and order typically reigned. Emma, still slightly rattled from her brief morning encounter with Logan, went about her usual tasks. She polished silverware in the formal dining room, changed linens in the West Wing, and reorganized Henry's study area, which he seldom used. She did all of this with the polite, measured efficiency expected of the staff, yet her mind kept wandering to how Mr. Becker had said, "Thank you," in that low, halting tone. Around 10 o'clock, Henry dashed by on his way outside to the garden. He paused long enough to greet Emma with an enthusiastic grin, as if they held a shared secret. She gave him a small nod, returning a smile. The fleeting moment warmed her more than she cared to admit. Then Henry was gone, sneakers squeaking on the polished tile as he headed off to explore or perhaps pester the gardener with his questions about the rose bushes. This calm would not last. Close to noon, the hum of an unfamiliar car engine reached Emma's ears. Through the tall windows, she saw a sleek black vehicle gliding up the driveway. A well-dressed woman with dark sunglasses emerged, her posture rigid as she eyed the estate with evident distaste. Before Emma could scurry away unseen, the woman stepped inside, capturing Emma in her peripheral vision. "Hello," the guest said curtly. "Is Mr. Becker available?" Emma, uncertain how to respond, dipped her head. She recognized the woman's aura, someone used to immediate answers. "I believe he's in his private office, ma'am. May I get someone to show you the way?" "No need," the woman snapped, removing her sunglasses with a quick flick of her wrist. "I know where it is." In a single glance, she seemed to measure and dismiss Emma. Then, turning on her heel, she marched down the corridor. A hush fell in her wake, like a vacuum sealing off the space around them. Emma felt the tension coil in her stomach. She had no idea who that woman was, but her confidence radiated something close to threat, and Emma couldn't help but wonder if she was a business associate, a family friend, or someone more personal to Logan Becker. A few rooms away, Logan was in the midst of a conference call, eyes scanning a set of documents, when the door to his private office swung open. Seeing the abrupt intrusion, he muted the call and stood up with a frown. "Clarissa," he said, half a greeting, half an accusation. "I wasn't told you were coming by." Clarissa set her sunglasses on his desk, raising an eyebrow. "Your staff would have let me wait, but you know I don't stand on ceremony. Besides, I thought we agreed my dropping by unexpectedly is less suspicious than any planned visits." Logan exhaled slowly. He was in no mood for the half-hidden agendas that often accompanied Clarissa's presence. Right. Well, I'm in the middle of something. Make it quick. She studied his face intently, as if searching for cracks in his normally calm facade. I see you've got that tired look again. Don't tell me you've actually been staying up late working, or do you have a new hobby I should know about? Her tone was pointed, almost personal. Logan stiffened. He and Clarissa had a complicated relationship. She was a significant investor in one of his newest ventures, and their interactions walked a delicate tightrope between business and something that once might have been more. But as far as Logan was concerned, that more was a closed book. I have plenty of responsibilities, Logan replied, regaining a stoic posture. If there's something you need, send me an email. If you want to talk business, schedule a meeting. She gave a clipped laugh. You may be the empire builder, Logan, but don't forget you rely on me for that silent partner capital. I came here to ensure we're on the same page. She lifted her chin, glancing around. But I have to wonder how you're spending your time these days. He bristled at the insinuation. I'm doing what I've always done, keeping my house in order both literally and figuratively. Clarissa's eyes flicked past him to the corridor beyond. You sure about that? Rumors swirl in our circles when someone as powerful as you changes anything about his routine. Her lips curved into a knowing smirk. I've heard talk you hired new staff. You rarely bother with that yourself, so I'm guessing someone else interviewed them? Logan clenched his jaw. The conversation was sliding dangerously close to personal matters. The staff have nothing to do with your investments, Clarissa. She shrugged, but there was a triumphant gleam in her eyes, as if she'd cornered him. Still, it's interesting. Maybe I'll take a look around while I'm here. Never know if your personal situation might affect the business side. She placed a sealed envelope on the desk. These are the final terms for the next phase of funding. Sign them by the end of the week. Without another word, she turned and walked out, her heels clicking ominously on the polished floor. Logan remained standing there, mouth set in a grim line. His gaze traveled to the half-open door, beyond which staff hurried about in anxious quiet, probably well aware of Clarissa's arrival. He hated the intrusion, the casual threat, the suggestion that he was being monitored not just for business matters, but for whatever personal life he had left. Moments later, a timid knock broke his tension. The door edged open, and Emma's face appeared in the gap. She seemed unsure whether to speak. "Mr. Becker?" she asked softly. "I just wanted to see if you needed anything." In her hand she held a silver tray with a carafe of water and a glass. It was the normal courtesy she extended to every occupant of the mansion, except it was usually the butler's job to do so, not hers. Logan studied her posture, careful, respectful. Yet in her eyes there was kindness, no sign of guile or manipulation. He remembered Clarissa's insinuations and tried to mentally shake them off. "Thank you, Emma," he said quietly. "I could use some water." She placed the tray on a small side table. "I'm sorry about the disturbance," she murmured, her voice carrying genuine concern. She seemed in a hurry. He nodded, letting out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "She's an investor. She has a knack for appearing at the worst times." Emma gave a sympathetic nod. Her eyes flicked to the envelope Clarissa had left behind. Its presence seemed to weigh the entire room down with silent tension. "If there's nothing else, sir, I'll let you return to your work." His gaze followed her as she prepared to slip out. Some impulse made him speak. "Emma?" She paused, turning back expectantly. He took a second to gather his thoughts, choosing his words carefully. "Don't let anyone make you feel out of place here." The moment the words were out, he realized how they must sound, coming from the man who owned the estate and signed her paychecks. "I mean, if you ever feel uncomfortable with outsiders trying to pry into your duties or anything like that, let me know." Emma blinked, confusion laced with gratitude. "Of course, Mr. Becker, thank you." She left, and Logan was once again alone, the hush of the office creeping back in. He stared at the envelope. He could almost sense Clarissa's presence lingering, that controlling aura threatening to seep into every corner of his life. But for the first time he found himself thinking about how those intrusions might affect Emma and Henry. Downstairs, Emma tried to resume her chores without letting her racing thoughts betray her calm. Who was that glamorous woman, and how did she fit into Mr. Becker's life? She could tell their interaction wasn't merely professional. The tension had crackled in the hallway like static electricity. Yet Emma also sensed Logan's protectiveness, in a subtle, intangible way, as if he was silently letting her know that no matter who came at him with demands or illusions of control, she shouldn't be intimidated. It was a notion that left Emma's heart fluttering with both relief and caution. She had to remind herself, this is an employer's courtesy, nothing more. She recalled how Henry's face glowed with excitement whenever he talked about music or mentioned the next secret lesson. A sense of responsibility welled in Emma. Maybe teaching him a few notes at night was doing more good than she realized. A child who rarely had a mother figure, someone to encourage him, keep him company. If Emma's presence helped, then maybe it was worth the risk of stepping outside her strict job description. By mid-afternoon, Henry sneaked into the large laundry room where Emma was folding tablecloths and poked her arm. "Emma, guess what? Dad said he might come home before my bedtime. Maybe we can all do some music together." He spoke in a hushed voice, eyes shining. Emma set aside a folded cloth. "That's wonderful, but are you sure he said all three of us?" Henry shrugged, grin unwavering. "Well, maybe if Dad sees how fun it is, he'll want to join, don't you think?" His optimism was almost heartbreaking. Emma forced a smile and ruffled his hair. "Sure, Henry. Let's see how the evening goes." He dashed off again, presumably to check on the piano or to find the dog he'd been begging his father to adopt, though no dog had yet materialized. Emma found herself exhaling a shaky breath. The notion of sharing that quiet, nighttime piano routine with the imposing Mr. Becker felt both unimaginable and strangely appealing. Hours passed. The sun began to sink behind the manicured hedges, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The staff hurried to finalize dinner preparations. The massive oak dining table was set with gleaming cutlery. Aromas of roasted vegetables, fresh bread, and a savory main course wafted from the kitchen. Emma, however, was assigned to separate tasks away from the dining hall, arranging fresh flowers by the windows and ensuring the side rooms were tidy. At around 7, faint footsteps approached behind her. She turned to see Henry, wearing a collared shirt instead of his usual t-shirt, looking both excited and anxious. I think Dad just got home," he whispered, as if any loud sound might break the delicate thread of possibility in the air. "He said he'd read me a bedtime story, or maybe even watch me practice. You'll be around, right?" Emma, touched by the child's hopeful expression, brushed her palms on her apron. "I'll finish up these flowers, and then I'll be in the music room, if you need me." Henry flashed a smile, the kind that made his dimples show. "Thanks." With that, he hurried off, presumably to greet his father. 10 minutes later, Emma quietly entered the old music room. The upright piano stood in the corner, battered, but somehow regal. The staff had placed a small side table with a lamp there years ago, which was now the only source of light in the dim space. She carefully lifted the piano's fallboard to expose the black and white keys, checking if they were clean. She pressed a single note, a gentle E, letting the soft tone resonate. Her heart pounded at the thought that Logan might walk in any moment. Part of her prayed he wouldn't come, thus sparing her the swirl of confusing feelings. Another part of her secretly wished to see him in that more intimate space, away from the formalities that dominated the mansion's halls. A hush settled. The corridor outside was quiet. Emma's pulse sped up. Then, as if reading her thoughts, The door creaked open. Henry slipped in first, his face brimming with excitement. Logan followed, still in a crisp suit but with his tie loosened and vest undone. He looked different somehow, less imposing, more approachable. For a moment, none of them spoke. They all felt it, a tremor of possibility filling the air. Henry broke the silence. "Dad, Emma taught me a cool chord progression. Want me to show you?" Logan's gaze flicked from his son to the maid, the corners of his mouth edging toward a hesitant smile. "Yes, Henry, show me." He stepped forward, leaning one shoulder against the piano. Emma stepped aside, letting father and son take the bench. Henry pressed a tentative chord, then the next. A bright, simple melody formed. "Good job," Emma said softly, standing behind them with her hands clasped. "That's the piece you worked on last night, right?" Henry nodded eagerly. "Dad, maybe you could try? Just place your fingers like this?" To Emma's astonishment, Logan didn't protest. He slid onto the bench, albeit stiffly, and let Henry guide his hand. His expression was uncertain, perhaps even self-conscious. Yet under Henry's watchful eye, Logan pressed the keys, and a rough approximation of the chord emerged. It was shaky, but it sounded, well, almost playful. Emma felt her cheeks warm at the unexpectedly tender moment. A father and son, bridging a gap that had felt so wide and so empty, all through a single chord. The entire mansion might as well have disappeared. The fancy drapes and expensive paintings no longer mattered. The only thing that mattered was this hush of shared wonder. "Okay," Henry said, trying to contain his excitement. "Let's do it together." He counted off. They both pressed keys in unison, stumbling but laughing. Even Logan let out a small chuckle. Emma realized she should remain discreet, so she took a step toward the door. Yet before she could slip out, Logan caught her eye. There was a warmth there she hadn't seen before. It was as if he wanted her to stay. So she lingered, feeling an inexplicable sense of belonging, one she'd never expected to find in a place like this. For a quarter hour, father and son fumbled through a basic melody. Then Henry asked Emma to join. She gently sat on the opposite side of the bench, placing her hands on the lower register. A simple three-person collaboration emerged, half silly, half magical, and the synergy brought shy smiles to their faces. The walls that typically seemed so imposing around Logan felt smaller, as if the room itself bent to enclose them in a fragile bubble of closeness. In that moment, not one of them was paying attention to the time or to outside obligations. They played until Henry yawned, blinking heavily, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Logan placed a hand on his son's shoulder, softly suggesting it was bedtime. Henry nodded, still smiling. As father and son prepared to leave, Henry waved goodnight to Emma. "Thank you," he whispered, showing that boyish sincerity. Logan offered Emma a brief nod, an unspoken acknowledgement that said more than words could. Emma remained behind after they left, letting the leftover vibrations of the piano settle into the silence. She felt breathless, as if she'd witnessed a miracle. Slowly she closed the fallboard and stood. A small, trembling smile spread across her lips. Upstairs, as Logan tucked Henry in, he realized that for once, he didn't feel like a stranger in his own home. And downstairs, Emma discovered that for the first time in years, she felt a quiet sense of purpose. Their lives had intersected under the strangest circumstances, but maybe, just maybe, this was the start of healing old scars for both father and son. And as Emma stepped out into the corridor's soft lamplight, she couldn't help but suspect that her own heart was quietly, inevitably, steering down a path that would change her world forever. A pale dawn light found Emma standing by the window of her small bedroom in the servants' quarters, hugging her arms around herself for warmth. She was still in her nightdress, her hair loosely braided over one shoulder. Through the thin curtain, The estate grounds stretched like a quiet kingdom. Dewy lawn, towering hedges, and flower beds waiting for the first rays of sun to open their petals. Everything appeared calm, almost regal, but Emma's mind whirred with a blend of exhilaration and apprehension. Memories of the prior night played in her head like scenes from someone else's life. Henry's excitement, Logan's hesitant smiles, and the shared melody that wove their three lives together for a brief, magical interval. She'd barely slept, her heart refusing to calm. She was the maid, for goodness sake. Her role was to remain in the background, unnoticed except for the effectiveness of her work. Yet the closeness she had witnessed in the music room, an intimacy that set father and son on a path of genuine affection, had begun forging a different bond altogether. A knock at her door startled her. Emma pulled on a modest dressing gown and opened it to find Lucy, another maid, holding a stack of folded linens. Lucy was a year or two younger than Emma, with wide brown eyes and a perpetual expression of curiosity. This morning, her gaze sparkled with interest that went beyond ordinary chores. "Morning," Lucy said brightly. "Just finished sorting the new bedding. Mrs. Florence wants these in the smaller guest rooms. She asked if you could help me set them up." Emma took the linens. "Sure," she said, forcing a smile. Lucy hovered, her tone becoming conspiratorial. "You know, I've noticed something unusual. Mr. Becker was actually home last night. Like, really home, not rushing in and out. A few staff said they saw you and him in the music room." Emma froze, heat creeping up her neck. She managed a casual shrug. "Yes, I was tidying near the piano. Henry was practicing a bit. Mr. Becker stopped by." It wasn't a lie, but it was certainly not the entire truth. Lucy's brows rose, but she only giggled. "My, you are braver than me. Being around the boss like that would give me palpitations. But don't worry, I know you're not one to brag. Anyway, let's get these sheets upstairs. Mrs. Florence is on the warpath about that wing being perfect by noon." Emma exhaled, relieved that Lucy didn't probe further. But the exchange left her unsettled. Rumors traveled fast in large estates. She dreaded speculation that might twist a kind gesture into scandal. They finished making up the smaller guest rooms, dusting surfaces, tucking in crisp sheets, fluffing pillows, trying to outpace Mrs. Florence, the head housekeeper, who made random checks to ensure everything was immaculate. By mid-morning, Emma was free to tackle a separate assignment, wiping down the portrait gallery. She entered the wide corridor lined with oil paintings that captured generations of Beckers. High windows let in enough sunlight to make the rich colors glow. Starting from one end, Emma dusted the gilded frames with a feather duster, stepping carefully on the polished parquet. Her progress slowed when she reached a large portrait of a strong-jawed man standing beside a woman in an elegant gown. Logan's parents, she realized, from the last century's style of clothing. She paused, examining the resemblance. The father's piercing eyes were much like Logan's. The mother in the painting wore a faint, gentle smile that was eerily reminiscent of Henry's. Emma felt a mild shiver as if the painting itself was watching her. Further down, she saw smaller portraits of extended relatives, including a painting of a young Logan at a piano, an image that startled her. He couldn't have been more than 10 or 11, formal posture at a grand piano, his expression hauntingly solemn. She lingered, wondering at the synergy between that painting and the half-broken upright piano in the side room downstairs. Could it be that Logan had once loved music and somehow lost that passion along the way? A soft rustle of footsteps alerted her that someone was approaching. She turned to see Henry round the corner, a timid grin on his face. "You found me," Emma teased lightly, setting her feather duster aside. "Mom," Henry blurted, then caught himself, cheeks flushing. "I mean, Emma, sorry, sometimes I slip." He fiddled with the hem of his t-shirt, which had a cartoon character on it. "Dad told me that you used to study piano properly. Is that true?" Emma blinked. "He mentioned that?" Henry nodded. He just said you're gifted or something. He didn't say much more, but I was thinking, maybe you could teach me a song, like a real song with a name. Last night's chords were cool, but I want to learn something that has an actual title. Emma gave a modest shrug, her heart fluttering at the indirect compliment from Logan. Yes, Henry, I'd love to, but it'll take practice. Are you ready for that? Henry's face lit up. Yes. Can we start today? She glanced at the corridor. I have a lot of tasks, but if I finish early, maybe this afternoon? Yes. Henry pumped a fist in excitement. Then his tone softened. Dad's in some big meeting with people who look important, but maybe if we play well, he'll come watch again. Emma felt a pang at the genuine longing in Henry's voice. We can try, she said gently. No promises on whether your father can join us, though. Henry looked up at the portrait Emma had been cleaning. That's Grandpa Alfred and Grandma Celeste, he said, pointing at the big painting of Logan's parents. I never met them. They died before I was born. Emma nodded, noticing his somber expression. But a part of them lives on in you, and in your dad, she said. Henry frowned as if the concept puzzled him. That's what Dad says, but sometimes I feel like I don't know them at all. Memories can be told through stories, photos, and sometimes music, Emma said, choosing her words. Maybe that's another reason music is so special. It helps us connect to people we've lost. Henry was quiet for a moment. Then he glanced at the smaller painting of young Logan at the piano. Dad doesn't talk much about when he was a kid, but I think he used to like playing. Once I asked about the fancy grand piano in the main hall, but he said it was just for show. I guess he quit or something. Emma rested a hand on Henry's shoulder. Everyone has reasons for stepping away from certain things. Maybe one day he'll share them with you. Henry nodded. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, see you later, Emma. And with that, he scurried off, clearly enthusiastic about their proposed lesson. Emma returned to her dusting, but her thoughts were on Logan's odd relationship with music. Perhaps that was part of the reason he'd seemed so hesitant last night. He was confronting memories he'd shelved away. The question was, what had led him to abandon the piano in the first place? She finished cleaning the portrait gallery just before noon, then helped with a quick reorganization of the linen closets. After a short lunch break in the staff kitchen, during which Lucy chattered about the latest staff gossip, Emma excused herself to tackle her final task of the day, vacuuming and tidying the second-floor lounge. If she wrapped up quickly, she'd have an hour to show Henry a real piece on the piano. But the second-floor lounge was occupied. As Emma arrived with her cleaning cart, she saw the door ajar and heard voices. Carefully peeking in, she recognized Clarissa, the glamorous visitor from the previous day, pacing with her phone pressed to her ear. Her posture was tense, and she gestured animatedly. No, this is not negotiable, Clarissa snapped into the phone. I've already spoken to him, but he's stalling. I need results. We didn't pour that kind of capital into Becker Industries to watch him slip into some paternal fantasy. A chill ran through Emma's veins. She shouldn't be eavesdropping, but Clarissa's tone drew her in. Who was she talking about? Logan? The woman paused, listening to the caller. Then, he's been distracted, Clarissa continued. I visited personally, yes, at the estate. Something's off. He used to be so focused, but now I see him drifting. Don't worry, I won't let that stand. Emma swallowed, realizing that Clarissa might be referencing the changes at home, maybe even the time Logan was spending with Henry around the piano. A pang of alarm sounded in Emma's heart. She eased backward, hoping Clarissa wouldn't spot her. But Clarissa ended the call abruptly, turning to see Emma. For an uncomfortable moment, their gazes locked. Clarissa's lips curved into a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Well, Clarissa said, arching an eyebrow, if it isn't the new maid. Emma, caught, tried to maintain composure. I'm sorry, ma'am, I was just about to vacuum the lounge. I didn't want to interrupt. Clarissa crossed her arms. And so polite. What's your name?" "Emma," she replied softly. "Emma." Clarissa let the name roll off her tongue as though testing its weight. "I've heard glimpses about you." Emma's heart pounded. She had a feeling Clarissa was well aware of more than just her name. "I'm only here to do my duties. If this is a bad time, I can come back later." Clarissa eyed her, a note of disdain. "Yes, do come back later. I'd hate to be disturbed." She took a step forward, looking Emma up and down. "A word of advice. Don't get too comfortable here. The staff come and go like the breeze. Be mindful of your place." Emma's cheeks burned. She forced a courteous nod. "I understand. I'm sorry for any inconvenience." Without another glance, Clarissa brushed past, her perfume leaving a faint trail of floral and something harsher, like bitterness. Emma stood rooted, the vacuum's handle clutched in her hand, feeling oddly shaken. Clarissa's words played like an ominous echo. "Don't get too comfortable." She's cunning, Emma thought, and not just about business. She sensed a sharpness that suggested Clarissa could sniff out any personal entanglements, especially those involving Logan. She returned the vacuum to its closet, deciding it was best to wait until Clarissa was fully out of the lounge. Emma felt an odd mixture of anger and humiliation. She'd done nothing wrong, and yet Clarissa had a way of making her feel unwelcome, worthless. Was it pure jealousy, or was it strictly about controlling Logan's business environment? Her shift continued, though Emma's thoughts kept slipping back to Clarissa's conversation. She managed to complete the rest of her chores before mid-afternoon. Exhausted but determined, she slipped into the music room. Henry was already there, excitedly rummaging through a dog-eared book of beginner piano pieces. He'd found an old stack of sheet music on top of the instrument, some pages so yellowed they nearly crumbled at the edges. "Look, Emma," Henry exclaimed. "There's a piece called Moonlight Path. Do you know it?" She studied the tattered page, then nodded. "I've heard something similar, though it might be a simpler arrangement of a classical piece. We can give it a try." Henry hopped onto the bench. "Let's do it." For the next half hour, Emma guided him carefully through the first measures. She showed him how to count timing, how to shift hand positions. Henry fumbled at times, but his enthusiasm was unwavering. Emma felt a warm sense of pride. Teaching someone so genuinely eager was a privilege. Mid-lesson, a presence stirred at the door. Emma glanced over her shoulder, half expecting Mrs. Florence to scold them for using off hours in the music room. But it was Logan, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. The tension in Emma's chest eased into something else, gratitude at his silent acceptance. Henry brightened. "Dad, are you off your calls now? Want to watch me play?" Logan stepped in, quiet, a mild weariness lining his features. "Yes, I wrapped up the meeting," he answered. "I see you're making progress." Emma stood, freeing up space on the bench. "He's doing well," she said gently. "We're just walking through the basics." Logan nodded, approaching to look at the sheet. "Moonlight Path, huh? I'm not sure I remember that one." "Oh, it's likely a simplified version," Emma explained. "Not a famous classical piece, just a nice melodic little tune." Henry set his fingers on the keys, playing the first few notes tentatively. A slip here, a missed note there. But as soon as Emma kindly corrected him, he tried again, determined to get it right. Logan watched for a while before quietly pulling Emma aside. Henry stayed focused on the keys, running through the same sequence again. Standing near a tall bookcase, Logan and Emma kept their voices low. "I apologize if Clarissa cornered you," Logan said, glancing at the door. "She's an investor, but I suspect she's prying into personal matters. It's what she does." Emma swallowed. "She told me not to get comfortable," she admitted, feeling uncertain whether she should reveal the entire conversation. Logan's jaw tightened. "I see. Listen, Emma, she doesn't speak for me or my household. If she bothers you again, come to me, please. I won't let her bully you." Emma felt a rush of warmth and a pang of fear at his protective words. She nodded softly. "I appreciate that, Mr. Becker," she whispered, mindful of Henry's presence only a few paces away. "Truly, I just want to make sure I'm not causing issues." His eyes flickered to Henry, who was now repeating the measure with a determined frown. "You're not causing issues," Logan said, his voice gentle. "On the contrary." He paused. "You're helping him rediscover something I lost sight of. That means a great deal to me." Emma's cheeks flushed. She inhaled to steady herself, flustered by the honesty in his tone. "I'm glad I can help," she replied, feeling her heartbeat quicken. Henry's voice rang out. "Dad, Emma, listen, I think I got it." The two returned to Henry's side. He played the short passage with fewer mistakes this time, enough of the melody to hint at the piece's dreamy character. When he finished, he beamed up at both of them. "That was great," Emma praised. "Every day you'll get better." Logan ruffled Henry's hair. "Indeed you will." He glanced at Emma. For a moment their eyes met, and an unspoken recognition passed between them, something akin to relief and gratitude, with an undercurrent of attraction. The moment ended when Henry slid off the bench, exclaiming he was hungry. The boy dashed off toward the kitchen, presumably in search of cookies. Emma and Logan lingered a second longer, in a hush that felt heavier than before. She felt that same stirring that had kept her awake last night. She sensed in Logan something conflicted, the world of business responsibilities pulling him in one direction, and a new wave of paternal devotion, and possibly something more, pulling him in another. "Thank you again, Emma," he murmured, almost formally, but the softness in his eyes betrayed a deeper meaning. Then he turned and followed his son out, leaving Emma with the quiet echo of Henry's final notes. She inhaled, placing a hand on the piano's wooden top, adrenaline thrumming in her veins. How could something so simple, guiding a child through a piece of music, carry such powerful significance? In the corridor, a shadow slipped away, unnoticed. Clarissa had returned, perhaps to retrieve a forgotten document, or perhaps to watch. She had caught sight of Emma and Logan, their heads bent close in whispered conversation. Something in Clarissa's eyes flashed dark with displeasure. She stepped back into the shadows, a storm of jealousy or anger forming in the furrow of her brow. Emma, oblivious to the silent watcher, closed the music book and tidied the bench. She reminded herself that she was just an employee, that staff are easily replaced. But the memory of Logan's protectiveness echoed in her mind, making her heart flutter against all reason. Their fragile moments of unity hadn't gone unnoticed, and soon enough, forces within and beyond the Becker household would conspire to break that fragile harmony. The unspoken closeness between Emma and Logan, tender yet precarious, was about to face challenges neither could foresee. For now, though, Emma let herself savor the sweetness of Henry's progress, comforted by the knowledge that, if only briefly, she was making a positive difference in both father's and son's lives. Morning light settled softly through the Becker mansion's tall windows, painting streaks of sun along the grand foyer's polished floor. Yet despite the calm that the estate usually cultivated, there was a nearly electric tension in the air, one that only sharpened after Clarissa's silent observation of Emma and Logan in the music room. The staff sensed a slight undercurrent of unease, though none could pinpoint its source. In large houses like this, moods had a way of traveling through corridors faster than words. Still oblivious to Clarissa's hidden watch, Emma went about her day with renewed focus. She had awakened early to help set out breakfast for Henry and make sure the household's usual business was in order. Her thoughts lingered on the previous afternoon's piano lesson, on the warm glimmer in Logan's eyes when he thanked her. With each passing day, Henry was blossoming, more confident, more eager to learn. And Logan, for all his composed demeanor, clearly cherished these small breakthroughs. But just as Emma finished arranging a vase of fresh flowers in the dining room, Mrs. Florence, the head housekeeper, hurried in with a frown. "Emma," she said, voice tinged with disapproval, "Mr. Becker wants to see you in his office." Emma's heart lurched, memories of Clarissa's disdainful warning filling her mind. "Did he say why?" she asked, trying to keep her tone steady. Mrs. Florence gave a curt shake of her head. "No, but best not keep him waiting." Emma dried her hands on her apron and made her way to Logan's private office. It was a room she'd entered only once or twice in a professional capacity, usually to deliver coffee or important letters. She couldn't help but recall that close conversation about Clarissa just the day before. Summoning her courage, she knocked lightly on the door. "Come in," Logan's deep voice called from inside. She stepped in, finding him seated behind a broad mahogany desk, phone in hand. He gestured for her to close the door, then ended the call. The faint lines of tension around his eyes suggested that phone conversation hadn't been a pleasant one. "Emma," he greeted, meeting her gaze. Despite his fatigue, he offered a small, reassuring nod. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." She hesitated. The idea of sitting in his office felt oddly formal, as though crossing a boundary. Still, she settled onto the leather chair, clasping her hands in her lap. "Is everything all right, Mr. Becker?" Logan exhaled, leaning forward. "I'm sorry if I pulled you away abruptly. I needed to talk to you about Clarissa." Emma felt her pulse spike. Her worst fears. Had Clarissa lodged a complaint, or demanded Emma be dismissed? Images of losing her job, of never seeing Henry's bright smile at the piano again, flooded her mind. She kept her composure with difficulty. "I see," she said softly. "If there's any concern about my presence here." Logan raised a hand. "No, you've done nothing wrong. But Clarissa, well, she has a habit of meddling. She's been pushing me about business deals, and now I suspect she's trying to find leverage by poking into my personal life." Emma's shoulders eased a fraction. "I did overhear a bit of a conversation she had on the phone," she admitted, cheeks coloring. "It sounded like she didn't approve of changes at the house. She told me not to get comfortable." Logan's eyes flashed with anger before he contained it. "She had no right," he said tersely. "You are not to worry about her threats. I'm the one who employs you, Emma, and I value what you bring to Henry's life, what you're doing for him. If Clarissa tries anything or says anything more, come directly to me, understand?" Emma nodded, touched by his protective tone. "Thank you, Mr. Becker, I will." He studied her a moment, as if wanting to say more. Then he cleared his throat. "That's all? You can go back to your duties. I just wanted you to know you have my support." A pause, accompanied by a faint half-smile that felt more personal than professional. "And Henry's, of course." Emma stood, voice barely above a whisper. "It means a lot. Thank you." She turned to leave, her heart thumping with an unsteady mixture of relief and a warmth she couldn't name. Logan watched her go, once again keenly aware of the lines he was walking, the lines between fatherly pride, professional distance, and something else that had begun stirring whenever Emma was near. He closed his eyes for a moment, replaying the image of her gentle guidance with Henry at the piano. In that memory, the estate felt less like a fortress and more like a home. Meanwhile, Clarissa had not been idle. Back in her sleek black sedan parked near the estate's towering gates, she made calls to various board members and acquaintances in the business world. Her voice was cold and controlled, carefully weaving a narrative. Yes, she assured them, Logan Becker was still a brilliant CEO, but there were concerns about his distraction, about the staff he was hiring, about how these new personal entanglements might affect the bottom line. She implied no direct scandal, just enough doubt to set tongues wagging. By the time Clarissa's last call ended, she had arranged a private meeting with a particularly influential figure in Logan's circle. She tossed her phone onto the passenger seat, glaring back at the Becker mansion through her tinted window. "You can't lose focus now, Logan," she whispered to herself. "I won't let you." That afternoon, after finishing her chores, Emma found Henry waiting in the music room, flipping through a children's theory book she'd left for him. He shot up when she entered, practically dancing with excitement. "Dad said we can show him the progress I made on Moonlight Path tonight," Henry exclaimed, waving the open book. "He has a dinner meeting at 6, but he promised to be home by 8. That's not too late, right?" Emma smiled at his eagerness. "Not too late at all. We'll practice a bit more now, then we can polish it up in the evening. Sound good?" Henry nodded vigorously, settling onto the bench. Emma sat beside him, guiding his small fingers to the opening chords. Every note had more precision now, less stumbling. Emma watched him, pride welling in her chest. She couldn't recall the last time she felt so fulfilled doing something for someone else. As Henry played, Emma glanced at the window. It overlooked the expansive gardens. She noticed that a few of the staff were busy trimming hedges and Lucy was carrying fresh linens across the lawn, likely for an outdoor event or late summer social planned on the premises. The estate was a hive of activity, everyone preparing for what they assumed would be a routine day of dinners and visits. But Emma's eyes lingered, scanning for any sign of Clarissa. Was she still near? Had she truly left? She shook her worries away and refocused on Henry. After another run-through, they took a short break, Henry rummaging for a snack while Emma tidied the sheet music. She lost track of time, content with organizing the dusty pages, many of which contained notations in an unfamiliar hand. Perhaps Logan's mother or grandparents had once used this piano. The legacies of the Becker family seemed to lie dormant in these scribbled notes, waiting for the next generation to tap into their meaning. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps, a heavier tread than Henry's, drew her attention. She turned and found Logan in the doorway, tie loosened, a faint sheen of weariness across his forehead. "Dad!" Henry called from the hallway, mouth half full with a cookie. "You're here early. That means we can—" Logan raised a hand with a wry grin. "I'm only here between calls, but I had a free half hour. Thought I'd see how things are going." He glanced at Emma, a kindness behind his eyes. "Didn't think I'd be free until later." Henry gestured for Logan to come closer to the piano. "I've been practicing the first page all morning. Emma says I'm improving." Logan nodded, stepping toward them. "Let me hear?" Without waiting, Henry dropped onto the bench and began playing. Although a few notes went flat, the general shape of the melody was clear. And to Emma's ears, it was lovely. She cast a quick glance at Logan and saw genuine pride flicker across his features. "That's wonderful," Logan murmured when Henry finished. "You're really working hard. Good job, son." He ruffled Henry's hair. Then he looked at Emma. "Thank you for guiding him so patiently." Emma tried to downplay it. "He's a natural student. I'm just showing him the basics." Henry hopped off the bench. "Dad, you try. Emma said you used to play. Maybe your hands remember?" There was a playful challenge in his grin. Logan swallowed, glancing at Emma. Her eyes held no judgment, just encouragement. He moved to the bench, exhaling as if steeling himself. Slowly he stretched his fingers over the keys. For a moment he looked like the boy in that portrait from long ago. Unsure, serious. Then he pressed a chord. The piano's resonance was deeper, fuller under his stronger hands. He tried a short sequence, a memory of a scale pattern. Though far from perfect, those notes evoked a hush in the room. Henry watched with amazement, and Emma felt a gentle tug in her chest. She recognized in Logan's tentative playing the remnants of a passion he'd once held dear, and perhaps buried under the demands of business and adulthood. He ended with a minor chord, shaking his head self-deprecatingly. "I'm rusty. That's probably enough," he muttered, standing up. Henry protested, but Logan patted his shoulder affectionately. "I really must finish some calls. Later tonight, though, I promise. We can do a family— Well, the three of us can—" He paused, as if catching himself. Emma sensed the slip. Logan had nearly referred to it as a family moment. The notion sent an unexpected ripple of warmth through her, followed by guilt. She was the maid, after all. This closeness was precarious. She offered him a polite nod. "We'll be here." Logan managed a small smile before heading out. Emma and Henry exchanged excited looks, but beneath Emma's outward enthusiasm, a quiet dread flickered. Deep in her mind, she remembered Clarissa's piercing gaze. How would this all end if outsiders learned how Logan, Henry, and she had grown so comfortable in each other's presence? The evening approached smoothly at first. The entire estate seemed to hold its breath for the moment father and son would reunite at the piano. Emma changed out of her work-worn uniform into a simpler dark skirt and blouse, telling herself it was only because she didn't want to mar the moment with dust. Lucy teased her lightly, asking if she was going somewhere fancy. Emma just laughed it off, cheeks coloring. Right at 8 o'clock, Henry burst into the music room. He'd forced himself to dress neatly, khaki pants and a pressed shirt. "Emma, is Dad back yet?" he asked, scanning the corridor. "He said he'd be here around now." Emma looked at the clock. "He might be a few minutes late. Meetings can run over. Let's review the piece while we wait." Henry nodded, and they began. The piece sounded steadier than ever. He even glanced at Emma mid-phrase, as if to say, "Hear that? I got it." She smiled, pressing a quiet chord on the piano to accompany him. But as Henry reached the final bar, Emma sensed a shift in the air. Heavy footfalls in the hall. She paused, expecting to see Logan stride in, maybe apologizing for tardiness. Instead, the door swung open to reveal Clarissa. She stepped in, wearing a fitted suit and an icy expression. "Henry," she said sweetly, but it held the ring of false warmth. "Playing your piano, I see. Where's your father?" Henry's face fell. "He's not here yet. He's coming soon." He glanced at Emma, uncertain how to handle Clarissa. The boy clearly knew little of her, but sensed she wasn't a friendly figure. Clarissa walked around the piano, her manicured nails tapping the wood. Emma rose from the bench, heart racing. "Do you need something, ma'am?" she asked quietly, her posture straight but polite. "Yes," Clarissa said, scanning the small lamp-lit room. "I needed to speak with Logan, but I suppose I'll have to wait. In the meantime—" Her gaze flicked to Emma. "I wonder if we can talk alone." Henry looked alarmed, turning to Emma. She patted his shoulder gently. "Henry, why don't you go see if your father's arrived? He might be at the main hall." The boy obeyed, though reluctance showed in every step. Once he left, Clarissa turned her attention to Emma, lips curving into a controlled smile. "You've made quite a place for yourself here in a short time. Henry adores you, and I suspect Logan has grown fond of your presence." Emma steadied herself. "I only aim to do my job. Henry's well-being matters." "Oh, indeed," Clarissa mused, taking slow steps around the instrument. "I'm sure Logan appreciates that motherly warmth you bring. Careful, though. He's got a complicated life, and it doesn't have room for illusions of romance or personal entanglements with the help." Emma's breath hitched. "I have no illusions, ma'am. I'm here for Henry." Clarissa's voice hardened, cutting her off. "Let me be clear. I am Logan's partner in major business matters. What he does in private can affect certain deals, certain relationships. If it looks like he's drifting into how shall I say, a careless fling with someone beneath his station, it could sabotage more than just a few contracts." Emma felt as if the ground was shifting beneath her. She tried to speak calmly. "I believe Mr. Becker's personal matters are his own, but there's no fling. We're not—" Clarissa gave a bitter chuckle. "You think I can't see it in his eyes? Or the way you both hover around Henry's piano lessons? You're stepping into roles that weren't assigned to you. The staff come and go, but I promise, if you cross certain boundaries, you'll be going sooner than you expect." Emma's eyes stung. She swallowed her indignation, forcing her voice to remain level. "If you're concerned about the household, you should speak to Mr. Becker directly. I'm just an employee." Clarissa's lips twisted. "Oh, I will speak to him. But I wanted to give you a chance to do the wise thing. Stop encouraging these little family scenes. Keep your distance. Don't give him reasons to think you're vital to his son's life, or else I'll ensure you regret it." The threat hung in the air. Emma's pulse pounded. She fought to keep tears at bay, not wanting to show weakness before this woman who clearly thrived on intimidation. Finally, Clarissa tossed her hair back and turned toward the door. "Be a good maid, Emma. Do your chores, collect your wages, and leave the rest to those of us who truly matter." Then she left, the click of her heels fading into the corridor. Emma stood trembling beside the piano bench, the lamplight flickering across silent keys. She felt a swirl of anger, sorrow, and anxiety. Through the haze, her mind fixated on Henry's smile, the pure, childlike happiness she'd nurtured in these lessons. She would not let that be destroyed by threats. But what if Clarissa held true power, capable of pushing her out? A moment later, Henry's footsteps returned, followed by Logan's deeper tread. Emma quickly composed herself, plastering on a neutral expression. The door opened and Henry rushed in. "Dad's here, Emma. Ready to play?" Logan followed, greeting Emma with a polite nod, but he halted upon noticing her pallor. "Emma, are you all right?" His brow furrowed. "You look shaken." Emma forced a tight smile, not wanting to cause a scene in front of Henry. "I'm fine, Mr. Becker. Perhaps the room is a bit warm. We can proceed." Henry didn't sense the undercurrent, too excited to begin. He dropped onto the bench, launching into the opening bars of the piece. Logan glanced from him to Emma, clearly aware something was off, but Emma only shook her head, as if to say, "We'll talk later." As Henry played, each note sounded more bittersweet to Emma. She sat beside him, guiding his hands, hoping her own trembling didn't show. Logan offered gentle praise, yet his eyes rarely left Emma's face, questions unspoken but burning. Outside, in the corridor's shadows, Clarissa lurked just long enough to hear the child's melody, then left with a self-satisfied smirk. She had delivered her warning. For Henry's sake, Emma poured all her focus into the lesson, encouraging him to complete the piece. When the final chord hung in the air, Henry looked up in triumph. Emma mustered a genuine smile, hugging him briefly. Logan gave a respectful clap, but his expression stayed troubled. He could sense the fragile tension that Emma was trying to hide. And thus, in that small lamp-lit room, the notes of Moonlight Path wound to a close, echoing with the unspoken conflicts swirling around them. Emma's mind reeled. Should she guard her heart and walk away from these illusions of belonging? Or trust the kindness that Logan had shown? Because if Clarissa had her way, Emma's blossoming bond with father and son would be severed before it could fully bloom, and the cost might be Henry's happiness as well as her own. The storm clouds that had gathered within the Becker estate, though mostly invisible to casual eyes, began to reflect in the actual weather. By the next morning, a thick, gray, overcast sky stretched over the manicured lawns. Gusts of wind rattled the windows and an early drizzle dotted the vast driveway. Something about the impending rain seemed to amplify the tension running beneath the household's surface. Emma woke earlier than usual. Her sleep had been restless, haunted by Clarissa's warning in the music room. She reminded herself, Henry's happiness was her first concern, but if her presence caused more harm than good, perhaps she should step back, if only to protect the child from future heartbreak. She felt torn, though, because Henry was making such strides and Logan had explicitly offered his support. Still, Clarissa's threat had been chilling, and the woman possessed a confidence that suggested real power to change Emma's fate. She clung to the hope that the day would unfold quietly, giving her time to find clarity. But by mid-morning, Lucy breezed into the servants' kitchen, carrying a half-dozen crisp white napkins that needed urgent ironing. Lucy's face was flushed with excitement and concern. "Did you hear?" Lucy demanded, setting the napkins down. Mrs. Florence said Mr. Becker's having an important luncheon meeting at home today with a big investor. We have to be on our best form. Emma's throat tightened. An investor? She didn't have to guess who that might be. Yes, someone with real influence apparently. Mrs. Florence wants everything to be perfect. Table settings, drapery, silverware. We're even polishing the fine china. I was told to help with the centerpieces, but we're short-staffed, so they might need you in the dining room, too. Lucy gave Emma a pitying glance. I know you don't usually do the main table if it's a private lunch, but Mrs. Florence insisted. Emma forced a faint smile. Then I'll do my best. In truth, her heart pounded at the idea of standing near the table if Clarissa was present. The possibility of confrontation loomed, but she swallowed her anxiety and got to work. She reminded herself that Logan had said he'd support her. If Clarissa tried anything openly, he would presumably step in, though that assumption felt shaky. After gathering the fine china from the butler's pantry, Emma joined 2 other staff members in the formal dining room. They removed the protective coverings from the antique mahogany table, giving it a final polish until it gleamed under the ornate chandelier. The silver candelabras were placed at equal intervals, and fresh ivory table linens were carefully spread. Emma, mindful of each detail, helped arrange the gold-rimmed plates and crystal glassware. The head butler arrived and directed them to position a lavish floral centerpiece in the middle. It was a display of white roses, delicate greenery, and a subtle splash of pale lavender blossoms. As Emma adjusted the final flowers, she caught a glimpse of movement at the doorway. Henry stood there, eyes flicking over the elaborate setup with wonder. Emma, he whispered, stepping inside. Is Dad having some fancy meeting today? She nodded. Yes, Henry. A luncheon for important guests. Henry's nose crinkled. I hope Dad won't be too busy afterwards. He said we might practice more, but if the meeting goes late... Emma placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. We'll see how it goes. If he's tied up, we can still practice ourselves. Henry offered a small smile. But Emma saw the uncertainty in his gaze. He so badly wanted to share his new skills with his father, to let Logan see just how dedicated he was. Everything all right, Henry? She asked, noticing his hesitation. He shrugged. I've never seen Dad plan a lunch meeting at home. Usually he does that in the city. I guess it must be really important. Before Emma could answer, Mrs. Florence bustled in, ushering Henry away with polite firmness. She reminded him that guests would arrive soon, so he should stay in the family rooms, not the dining area. Henry left with a reluctant nod. Emma returned to placing polished cutlery, each fork and knife aligned perfectly. She concentrated on her work to keep her hands from trembling. Shortly before noon, the first sleek car pulled up the long driveway. Through the dining room windows, Emma glimpsed a tall, well-dressed man step out. A crisp suit, silver hair, an air of cool authority. He didn't look like someone who'd be easily swayed. There was a purposeful confidence in the way he strode toward the entrance. Another car followed, from which Clarissa emerged wearing a sharp business ensemble. Emma recognized that stance. Clarissa was in her element, flanked by influential associates. Logan greeted them in the foyer, all polite handshakes and low-voiced welcomes. Emma observed from a distance, her stomach twisting. She'd suspected Clarissa would be part of the day's event, but seeing her arrive with reinforcements was unsettling. Clarissa caught Emma's eye in passing, a brief, cutting glance that hinted, behave, or else. The group moved into the lounge for pre-lunch discussions. Meanwhile, the staff finished placing the last touches in the dining room. Emma carefully positioned water glasses at each setting, ensuring no smudges marked the crystal. Lucy whispered that the head butler wanted them to serve at the table discreetly, delivering dishes from the kitchen and refilling drinks as needed. Emma braced herself. By the time the meal began, the tension was almost visible. Logan, at the head of the table, guided the conversation politely. The silver-haired investor, Mr. Whitmore, as Emma gathered from the addresses, commented on the estate's grandeur and how it reflected the Becker legacy. Clarissa sat nearby, chiming in with strategic remarks that steered the talk toward business expansions and profit projections. Occasionally, her gaze would flick in Emma's direction as she served, but each time Emma lowered her eyes and tried to remain invisible. "Logan," Mr. Whitmore said after the appetizer plates were cleared, "I've heard talk that you're, how shall I say, broadening your priorities. Something about changes in your living arrangements?" Logan's smile was restrained. "I'm simply making sure I spend enough time with my son, balancing business with fatherhood, so to speak." Clarissa leaned forward with a cool smile. "Indeed. It's admirable, though the rumor mill sometimes questions a CEO who devotes so many hours away from the office. We wouldn't want the brand's momentum to slip." Emma felt her pulse quicken. She hovered at the side, pitcher of water in hand. Logan's jaw tightened, but he maintained composure. "The brand remains strong, Clarissa. Our expansions are on schedule. I don't intend to let personal matters undermine the business." Mr. Whitmore chuckled mildly. "Good. I prefer dealing with men who know their responsibilities." He eyed the roast being served. "I must say, though, hosting at your home is a pleasant touch. Shows you're confident enough to let us see behind the curtains." Clarissa's lips curved. "Logan is nothing if not confident, but we all appreciate transparency in business, and in the personal associations that might affect it." Emma poured water into Clarissa's glass, her hand trembling slightly. Clarissa smirked at her as if to say, "Keep trembling." Courses rolled out. Soup, then the main dish. Emma and Lucy worked seamlessly to ensure no one's glass remained empty and every plate was served promptly. Logan maintained a calm front, answering queries about new ventures, revenue forecasts, and investor returns. But Emma noticed the vein at his temple pulsing, a sign of contained frustration, perhaps. Finally, dessert arrived, a delicate layered pastry with fresh fruit. Emma placed a portion before Clarissa, whose eyes narrowed. Then a small voice broke the grown-up lull. "Dad?" Every head turned to see Henry at the dining room's threshold. He was half hidden behind the ornate doorframe, clearly uncertain if he was welcome. Emma's breath caught, and so did Logan's, from the look on his face. This was not a typical moment for a child to interrupt a formal meeting. Logan's expression softened. "Henry, hey, what's up?" Henry took a timid step forward. Sorry if I'm not supposed to be here, but I was going to practice the piano and wanted to know if you had time to listen after lunch." His face glowed with hope. The silver-haired investor raised an eyebrow, amused. Clarissa's smile turned brittle. Logan exchanged a quick glance with Emma, who tried to convey calm. "We'll see, Henry," Logan said gently, then tried to shift gears. "Actually, that might be interesting. Mr. Whitmore, Clarissa, why don't you join me for a short break in the music room after dessert? We can talk in a more relaxed setting." Emma's stomach tightened. The last thing she wanted was Clarissa near the piano again, especially if Henry was eager to show off his progress. But Henry's eyes lit up, and Mr. Whitmore nodded with polite curiosity. "Why not?" he said. "It's been ages since I heard a live piano, and I'd like to see if Logan's new approach to balancing fatherhood inspires him." Clarissa shrugged, though her gaze pinned Emma with quiet warning. "Yes, let's do that. I'm curious too." Henry beamed, dashing off, presumably to warm up. The rest of the table finished dessert in a swirl of conversation that now carried an undercurrent of personal curiosity about Logan's fathering style. Emma kept her face neutral but inwardly braced for trouble. When the lunch concluded, Emma and Lucy cleared plates while the group stood, finishing final sips of coffee and tea. Then, as planned, Logan guided Whitmore and Clarissa to the music room. Emma followed a step behind, uncertain whether she should slip away or stay to assist. Clarissa's presence unnerved her, but the butler shot her a signal that staff should stand by for any refreshments or needs. Henry was already at the upright piano, flipping through the sheet music Emma had carefully placed for him. He looked up eagerly as they entered. Logan introduced him more formally to Mr. Whitmore, who made a pleasant show of shaking the boy's hand. Clarissa hung back, arms folded. Henry's fingers trembled slightly on the keys, glancing at Emma for reassurance. She offered him a small, encouraging smile from where she hovered. He began the piece, his Moonlight Path arrangement, playing the opening notes with carefully measured timing. At first, Henry's nerves caused a couple of slips, but he quickly recovered, forging onward. The melody floated with a gentle, nostalgic quality, filling the space in a way that momentarily hushed the corporate tensions. Logan stood near the piano, hands loosely in his pockets, but his eyes were fixed on his son's performance with unmistakable pride. Mr. Whitmore gave a small, appreciative nod, as if impressed by the child's dedication. Clarissa, meanwhile, studied Logan more than Henry, her expression calculating. When Henry finished, a smattering of soft applause followed. Logan clapped Henry on the shoulder. "Well done, son. That was great." Henry looked to Emma, a silent thanks in his eyes. She nodded, smiling. The moment of simple triumph radiated hope, until Clarissa cleared her throat. "Lovely," she said in a tone that contradicted the word. "But Logan, let's not forget the time. We've still got matters to finalize." Her gaze flicked around the small music room. "I suppose a fleeting break with family is acceptable, but we do have important business to conclude, yes?" Henry's shoulders drooped a fraction. He noticed the tension, though perhaps he didn't fully understand it. Logan glanced at Clarissa, annoyance slipping into his expression, but he kept himself composed in front of Whitmore. "Yes, we'll get back to it," he said. "I just wanted you both to see why this estate, this environment matters. I'm determined to balance fatherhood with my obligations." "Indeed," Whitmore murmured, sounding neutral. "Balance is key." Then he turned to Henry. "You keep playing, young man. Your father's onto something with encouraging your musical talent." Henry brightened a little at the praise. Clarissa merely pursed her lips. Logan added, "Henry's made remarkable progress. Emma here," he signaled to where she stood, "deserves credit for guiding him. She's been teaching him in her free time." His tone carried appreciation, enough to make Emma's face heat. Whitmore gave Emma a polite nod. "Excellent work," he said, apparently sincere. Clarissa, however, said nothing, her eyes glinting. Sensing the subtle aggression, Emma lowered her gaze, deferring to the men's conversation. She was relieved when Mr. Whitmore indicated a desire to return to the lounge to finalize some details, meaning the group would leave the piano behind. Logan shot a gentle parting smile at Henry, who whispered, "Thanks, Dad," as they moved away. But Clarissa lingered a moment, approaching Emma with the poised intensity of a cat stalking prey. She spoke softly so that Henry, busy rearranging sheet music, couldn't hear. "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts," she whispered. "Once these deals are done, your presence here will be reassessed. Let's hope you're still vital then." Emma's pulse pounded, but she kept silent, refusing to be baited in front of Henry. With a final, cutting look, Clarissa exited to catch up with the two men. The sound of her heels on the hall tiles resonated like distant thunder. Emma drew a shaky breath, turning her attention to Henry, who glanced at her in concern. "Emma, is everything okay? You look worried?" She forced a smile, patting his arm. "Nothing to worry about, Henry. You played beautifully. Now, why don't you practice a bit more? I'll be in the kitchen, but I'll come back to check on you soon." He nodded, returning to the keys, though a shadow of confusion remained in his eyes. Emma slipped away, heart heavy. She thought of Logan's protective words, but Clarissa's threat loomed. Perhaps, after Mr. Whitmore's business concluded, Clarissa would be unstoppable in her effort to remove Emma from the household. And if that happened, what would become of Henry's newfound happiness and the fragile bond that had formed between father and son? Only time would tell, Emma told herself, shoulders tense as she retreated to the staff corridor. The faint strains of Henry's piano practice carried behind her, battling the quiet dread that Clarissa left in her wake. Emma silently resolved to keep guiding Henry as best she could for as long as possible, no matter how many storms brewed outside or within the mansion's grand walls. The late afternoon sun struggled through the clouds, leaving the Becker estate shrouded in a dull gray haze. Although the lunch meeting had ended, its aftermath weighed heavily on everyone. Mr. Whitmore had departed with polite handshakes, and Clarissa had withdrawn to a side room with Logan, presumably to finalize key points of their deal. The staff tiptoed around, acutely aware that tensions still simmered behind closed doors. Alone in the kitchen, Emma rinsed a few teacups and dessert plates from the meal. Her hands moved automatically under the faucet, yet her mind churned restlessly. The meeting had revealed how intimately the corporate and personal aspects of Logan's life intertwined, and how Clarissa seemed determined to keep them inseparable. Emma recalled Clarissa's parting whisper, "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts." Those words echoed like a threat on repeat. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she almost jumped when Lucy tapped her shoulder. "You all right?" Lucy asked, brow furrowed in concern. Emma forced a tight-lipped smile. "Just tired," she said. "That was a big luncheon. I'm glad it's over." Lucy seemed ready to say more but paused, glancing at the corridor. "Yeah, Mrs. Florence told me we need to recheck the lounge. Mr. Whitmore forgot his coat and we're to bring it to the main hall. Will you help me?" Emma nodded, shutting off the water. Anything to keep busy, to push the swirling anxieties to the background. She dried her hands and followed Lucy through the corridors. As they neared the lounge, muffled voices drifted from behind the door. One clearly belonged to Logan, the other was Clarissa's unmistakably pointed tone. Emma halted, unsure if it was appropriate to go in. Lucy wrinkled her nose. "They're still in there. Let's wait. We just have to grab the coat from the coat stand, right?" Indeed, a tall wooden rack stood inside. Through the door's crack, they could see Mr. Whitmore's sleek gray coat hanging beside Logan's tailored suit jacket. Emma hesitated. She could just slip in quietly, retrieve the coat, and slip out. The conversation wasn't meant for staff ears, but time was pressing. Mr. Whitmore's chauffeur was waiting. She gestured to Lucy to stay back, then inched the door open carefully. Logan and Clarissa stood by a marble-topped side table. Papers were spread out, presumably contract documents. Their voices were low, but the tension was palpable. Emma tried to avoid eavesdropping, though fragments of conversation reached her. "Still not confident in these expansions," Clarissa was saying. "Whitmore wants assurance you won't be sidetracked." Logan's reply was firm but quiet. "My personal life doesn't impede my work. We hit every quarterly target." "But there's a perception problem," Clarissa pressed. "You're spending more and more time at home. You hired staff who are, well, let's say, outside the usual circle. It raises questions about how you're allocating your focus." Emma's cheeks burned. She grasped that Clarissa was referencing her in some veiled way. Logan's posture stiffened, fists curling at his sides. "My staff's backgrounds are not your concern," he said. "And if you mean Emma—" Clarissa cut him off. "Ah, yes, Emma. The modest maid with a suspiciously strong influence on Henry, and apparently on you. I worry that your paternal instincts are clouding your business instincts. Look, I respect fatherhood, but if you let a random housemaid insert herself into Becker affairs—" "Stop!" Logan snapped under his breath. Emma, tucking herself halfway behind the door, had never heard him sound so cold. "You have no idea what Emma's done for Henry's well-being. Without her, he'd still be withdrawn and disinterested. She's good for him." Clarissa let out a low, humorless laugh. "Good for him, but perhaps not for us. Don't be naive, Logan. All it takes is a minor scandal, an insinuation of an entanglement, and we risk undermining confidence among key investors. We need a certain image, particularly if we're forging new partnerships." Logan drew a sharp breath. "I won't live my life dictated by idle speculation. and I won't force out an employee simply because she's valuable to Henry." Clarissa shook her head. "You've built an empire, but you're forgetting how fragile public perception can be. This woman, Emma, has a hold on you or on Henry. Eventually, it'll bleed into the business. If you're not prepared to end it, then at least keep it discreet." Something in Logan's face hardened. "We're done here," he said. "I've signed the documents. If Whitmore's satisfied, then so am I. There's nothing else to discuss." Emma's heart thundered. She could almost feel Logan's simmering anger, Clarissa's manipulative pressure. She had only intended to get the coat, but she'd overheard far too much. She took a quick, silent step forward, hand reaching for the coat on the stand. Yet her haste caused it to tip slightly, the wooden rack knocking against the wall with a soft thud. Both Logan and Clarissa turned instantly. Emma froze, coat in her hand, eyes wide with guilt. "I'm sorry," she blurted, voice trembling. I needed Mr. Whitmore's coat for the driver. I didn't want to interrupt." Logan's stern glare softened the moment he realized it was Emma. Clarissa, however, narrowed her eyes. "Ever the eavesdropper," she muttered under her breath. Emma, cheeks flaming, bowed her head. "I only came for the coat. I didn't hear—" "It's fine," Logan interjected, striding over to her. He placed a steadying hand on her arm. "Get the coat to the foyer. Let the driver know Mr. Whitmore can pick it up on his way out." Emma managed a nod, slipping out as quickly as possible. Her heart hammered so loudly she barely registered Lucy's startled expression outside. "Thanks," Lucy whispered, grabbing the coat. "I'll handle it. Are you okay? You look pale." I'm fine," Emma lied, letting Lucy hurry off down the hallway. She remained in place, back against the wall, eyes shut. Scenes from inside the lounge replayed in her mind. Clarissa's accusations, Logan's defensive stance. A swirl of relief and fear collided in her chest. He was standing up for her, but at what cost to himself? She needed fresh air. Without a word to the staff, Emma slipped out a side door into the estate's rear garden. The drizzle had turned into a mild sprinkle, but she didn't care. The cool droplets on her cheeks almost felt soothing. She paced along a gravel path between trimmed hedges, inhaling the scent of wet grass, trying to calm her nerves. A gnawing sense of guilt wormed through her. Logan was defending her, perhaps risking deals or his reputation. Was that fair? She never wanted to be a liability to him, and Clarissa's insinuations about a minor scandal echoed in her mind. If rumors circulated that Logan Becker was intimately involved with a staff member, someone beneath his station, the ramifications could indeed be swift and brutal, especially in the circles he operated within. Her steps slowed near a stone bench sheltered by an ancient oak. She sat, head in her hands, letting the rain soak her hair. Her thoughts drifted to Henry, the one bright spot in this turmoil. He'd found so much joy in music these past weeks. Could Emma simply walk away from that? And what of Logan's subtle expressions, his gentle gratitude, the glimpses of vulnerability he'd shown her? They were forging a connection, delicate, unspoken, but undeniably real. Yet Clarissa's threat stood over them like a sharpened blade. Emma didn't know how long she remained there in the drizzling garden. Eventually, the patter slowed, and the clouds parted slightly. She shivered, realizing her light cardigan was damp. It was time to go back inside before someone noticed her absence. She entered the side door near the staff quarters, hoping to retrieve a dry set of clothes. As she passed through a narrow hallway, Henry appeared around the corner. "Emma!" he exclaimed, worry etched on his face. "Where were you? I was looking all over." She attempted a reassuring smile, patting his shoulder. "Just needed some air, Henry. Is everything okay?" He frowned. "Dad's in his office. He looked upset when he left that lounge with Clarissa. I asked if we could do some piano, but he said he needs to sort something out." Then Clarissa drove off. Emma's stomach twisted. "He's upset?" Henry nodded. Yeah, I overheard them talking about business, but I don't really get it. Dad just told me to give him space for a bit. The boy fiddled with the hem of his shirt. I'm worried. Ever since that lunch, the whole house feels tense. Did something happen? Emma swallowed. She couldn't burden Henry with the truth about Clarissa's threats and manipulations. Your dad has a lot of responsibilities, she said gently. Sometimes grown-ups get stressed after big meetings. I'm sure it's nothing you did. Henry bit his lip, then looked up hopefully. Maybe if he heard me play again, it would cheer him up? Emma mustered a smile, though her heart ached. It might. Let's give him a little time to calm down. Then we can see. Okay? Henry nodded reluctantly. Okay. I'll be in the music room if you need me. He darted away, leaving Emma torn between wanting to comfort him and wanting to fix the root of the tension in the house. Night fell early under the still gloomy sky. The staff bustled about, clearing away the remnants of the luncheon and tidying any traces of the day's events. Emma went through the motions, half distracted. She longed to talk to Logan, if only to make sure he was all right, but he was sequestered in his office, door firmly closed. Now and then, she glimpsed him through the frosted glass, head bent over papers, phone pressed to his ear. By 8 o'clock, Lucy mentioned Henry had eaten dinner alone in the kitchen, then wandered off to the music room again. Emma, finishing up her last chore, felt a pull to check on him. She found him perched at the piano, lightly tapping a scale, though his usual enthusiasm was absent. He perked up a bit when he saw her. Emma, he said, forcing a half smile, I've been waiting to see if Dad would come by, but I guess he's still busy. Emma's heart squeezed at the disappointment in his voice. He might be caught in phone calls, she said softly. How about we play through something new? It might lift your spirits. She retrieved a thin book of simple exercises. Henry nodded, but his expression stayed troubled. They began an easy piece, a sweet lullaby that Emma had once practiced as a child. Henry followed her lead, pressing each note carefully. Their quiet melody filled the small room, dimly lit by one lamp. Rain spattered the window in a soft rhythm, almost in sync with the gentle chords. Then, footsteps, heavy yet measured, approached. The door cracked open, and Logan entered, looking drained. Henry glanced over, eyes lighting up. Dad, we were practicing a lullaby. You want to hear? Logan cleared his throat, stepping inside. Yes, Henry, he said, voice subdued. I'd like that. Sorry I'm late. Emma stood, giving him space. The tension around his eyes was unmistakable. You can stay, Logan said quietly, catching her motion. Please, don't go. She hesitated, aware of the unspoken friction. But Henry's hopeful face convinced her to remain. She retook her seat at the piano bench, scooting so Henry could have the center position. Logan came closer, arms crossed lightly, leaning against the instrument's side. Henry started the lullaby again. His nerves had lessened. Emma's presence steadied him, and he played with a new confidence. Logan watched, the lines of stress on his brow easing slightly. His gaze drifted to Emma, and for a split second, their eyes met. She saw gratitude, and a flicker of something deeper. She felt her cheeks warm, remembering Clarissa's dire warnings. When Henry finished, Logan exhaled softly, then ruffled his son's hair. You're getting better by the day. Thank you, buddy. That helps. Henry beamed, but curiosity burned in his eyes. Dad, are you okay? You looked worried earlier. Logan forced a small, reassuring smile. I'm all right, just dealing with some business. Headaches. Nothing for you to worry about. Henry nodded. Can you stay and play with us? A shadow crossed Logan's features. He glanced at Emma, then gently brushed Henry's request aside. Maybe tomorrow, Henry. I'm worn out. I just wanted to see you before bed. Henry looked crestfallen but managed a polite nod. Okay. Night, Dad. Logan briefly squeezed Henry's shoulder, then turned to Emma. For a moment he seemed poised to say something meaningful, but the weight of the day dulled his voice. "Thank you, Emma," he said quietly, echoing a phrase that had become common yet still held a personal note. "You're doing more for Henry than you know." Emma's throat felt tight. "I'm glad," she whispered, not trusting herself to speak louder. She wanted to tell him she'd heard some of that exchange with Clarissa. She wanted to reassure him that she'd do whatever was needed to avoid causing trouble. But the words stuck, tangled in her own doubts. Logan slipped away, footsteps echoing down the corridor. Henry sighed and started fiddling with a new melody, his mood subdued. Emma lingered, helping him navigate the notes, but the spark of earlier sessions was muted by the hush of unresolved anxieties. When Henry finally yawned, Emma suggested he head to bed. She walked him to the base of the grand staircase, wishing him sweet dreams. Before he ascended, the boy turned. "Emma, can we do more tomorrow?" His voice was soft, a plea for some semblance of normalcy. "Of course," she promised, her chest aching. "We'll keep practicing." He trudged upstairs. Emma remained in the foyer a moment, hearing the faint patter of rain beyond the stained glass windows. She felt that same question gnaw at her. Should she continue forging this bond, or step away to spare them both future pain? In the end, she returned to her quarters with no clear answer. The only thing she knew was that, for Henry's sake, she'd endure Clarissa's hostility a bit longer. The boy's budding confidence was worth the risk, or so she told herself as she settled into a restless sleep, storms raging both outside and within her swirling thoughts. By the time Emma awakened, the storm that had hovered over the Becker mansion for days finally broke into a torrential downpour. Rain battered the windows and wind gusted so hard that tall trees around the estate bowed and creaked in protest. A moody gloom draped every hallway, as if the weather itself reflected the tensions swirling through the house. She rose from bed with a knot in her stomach. After the unsettling events of the past few days, the high-stakes investor luncheon, Clarissa's threats, Logan's protectiveness, she hoped that maybe the stormy weather might grant her some temporary reprieve. Perhaps Clarissa would remain away. Perhaps Logan, with no outside meetings, might finally relax and just enjoy the day with Henry. But one look at the swirling gray skies told Emma that nothing would be that simple. She dressed in her uniform quickly, tying her hair back and stepping into the corridor to begin her morning tasks. As she passed a window on the second-floor landing, she caught a glimpse of the front driveway beyond the battered rose bushes. To her surprise, a sleek black car rolled up, headlights cutting through the downpour. Her pulse lurched at the thought that it might be Clarissa again, arriving unannounced. But no, this vehicle was different, a sedan with tinted windows. Someone else had come, braving the storm to see Logan Becker. Emma hurried downstairs, half expecting the staff to be buzzing with news of the visitor's identity. Instead, she found Lucy in the foyer, wringing out the hem of her apron, which was damp from the gusts of rain that blew in whenever the main door opened. "Who is it?" Emma asked quietly, eyeing the door. "Another investor?" Lucy shrugged. "Don't know. The driver asked for Mr. Becker. Fancy clothes, though. Looked like a lawyer or something. I guess we'll find out soon enough." Emma's stomach sank further. Lawyers, investors, high-profile guests. It all meant more pressure on Logan's time. More opportunities for Clarissa's rumored talk of scandal or bad optics to rear its head. She swallowed, forcing herself to focus on the chores at hand. But minutes later, while she was polishing silverware in the dining room, she heard voices drifting from the foyer, voices that grew louder and more insistent. One voice was Logan's, pitched low and firm. The other was deeper, someone else's, and carried a certain tension. Emma couldn't catch specific words, but it sounded like an argument on the verge of erupting. She set aside the last spoon and ventured cautiously toward the foyer. Hidden partly by the threshold, she glimpsed Logan facing a tall, broad-shouldered man in a dark suit. The man held a slick black umbrella at his side, water dripping onto the marble floor. His expression was stony, and in his other hand he gripped a slim briefcase. "I told you," Logan said, jaw clenched. "There's no need to show up unannounced. We can schedule a meeting at my office next week." The man shook his head. "I'm done waiting, Becker. I've been patient, but your expansion deal is impacting existing business. My clients want immediate answers." His voice vibrated with restrained anger. Emma caught her breath. This man didn't have Clarissa's smooth, manipulative tone. He was more direct, more confrontational. She realized this must be another piece of the complicated puzzle swirling around Logan's corporate empire. Logan raked a hand through his hair, frustration radiating off him. "Fine. Let's talk in my office." They disappeared into the corridor leading toward the study, leaving the foyer eerily quiet. Emma retreated, unsettled. Yet another confrontation. She wasn't sure how many more Logan could handle. She moved to the kitchen, hoping to bury herself in mundane tasks, but her mind refused to let go of the tension swirling in the house. She found Henry in the kitchen, munching on toast with a gloomy expression. The boy was dressed in casual clothes, no school today because of a teacher workday apparently, and he fiddled with his phone, eyes distant. "Morning, Henry," Emma said gently, noticing his subdued mood. "Everything okay?" He shrugged. "Dad's in a meeting again. The new guy who came in looked mad. I was hoping maybe we could all play something together after breakfast, but now Dad said he might be busy for hours." Emma offered a sympathetic look. "We can't control when people arrive, but maybe once your father is done, he'll join us." She tried to sound optimistic, though deep down she feared Logan's day would once again be consumed by business dramas. "In the meantime, we can practice ourselves, unless you're tired of it." Henry's face brightened a notch. "No, I want to. It's raining so hard I can't go outside anyway. Let's do it." They finished a quick breakfast, and Emma guided Henry to the music room. The house felt oddly cold, despite the central heating, as though the storm outside had crept into the mansion's very walls. Henry shivered once or twice as they sat at the piano bench. "Is it always this windy in fall?" he asked, pressing down a random key that emitted a haunting echo in the near-empty room. "Sometimes storms get intense," Emma replied, adjusting a lamp for better light. "Don't worry, the house is sturdy. It's just the wind howling." Henry nodded, warming up with a few scales. As the notes played, Emma's gaze flicked now and then to the hall, half hoping Logan might stroll in, but the corridor remained empty. The thunder of the storm seemed to match Henry's initial chord. He jumped at a particularly loud rumble outside, then resumed playing, trying to focus on the lullaby. They worked diligently, pausing for Emma to correct his fingering or help him count the beats. Despite the gloom, each small improvement in Henry's technique felt like a victory. After about half an hour, Henry set his hands in his lap, expression suddenly pensive. "Emma, do you think Dad would ever let me go to a music school? Like, full-time? Sometimes I see kids on TV who go to these special music academies." Emma blinked. "Well, that's a big question. A lot would depend on your father's plans, your own interest and resources." "Why do you ask?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I just like this. Piano, I mean. I never thought I would, but it makes me feel calm. Like I can make something good even when things around me are weird." He looked down, voice dropping. "The mansion is so big and empty sometimes, especially when Dad's away or busy. But with music, I don't feel alone." Emma's heart clenched at his frank honesty. She gently ruffled his hair. "I'm glad it helps, Henry. I think you have real potential. Maybe your father would consider more advanced lessons if you keep showing him how dedicated you are." Henry smiled faintly. "I'll practice a lot then, so maybe someday he'll say yes." With renewed determination, he began the piece again. They fell into a steady rhythm of practice, so much so that Emma jumped when someone cleared their throat nearby. She turned, half expecting Logan, but to her surprise it was Lucy, appearing in the doorway with a somewhat frantic expression. "Emma, Mrs. Florence needs your help in the study," Lucy whispered urgently. "The man who came to see Mr. Becker is causing a fuss or something. Mrs. Florence said an extra staff member might be needed, maybe to bring tea, but it sounded more serious than that." Henry's playing halted, and he looked anxiously between Emma and Lucy. Emma patted the boy's shoulder. "Stay here, Henry, okay? I'll be back soon." She followed Lucy through the corridors. They passed the foyer and arrived at Logan's study. Even with the door closed, Emma could hear raised voices inside. Mrs. Florence stood stiffly near the door, arms folded, face grim. "What's happening?" Emma asked softly. Mrs. Florence shook her head. "That visitor is demanding to see some documents, refusing to leave until Mr. Becker grants him what he wants. Logan asked me to bring refreshments to calm the tension, but I think he needs more help, someone calm but unobtrusive. I figured you might do. If it gets heated, just keep your head down." Emma swallowed. "All right, I'll do my best." Taking a tray of tea and cups, she knocked lightly, then entered at Logan's muffled, "Come in." The atmosphere inside the study felt charged, the air thick as if a lightning strike had just sparked. Logan sat behind his desk, brow furrowed. The tall man in the dark suit stood near the window, posture bristling with anger. Papers were strewn across the desk's surface. "I don't want excuses," the visitor growled. "You made promises about expansions not infringing on existing markets. Now my clients say your new factories are pushing them out. We want immediate compensation, or an alternative plan." Logan's tone remained measured, though Emma could see the frustration in his clenched jaw. "Your clients are free to negotiate terms, but you're demanding a payoff with no basis in the current contract. I can't just hand over money. Then find a basis." The visitor jabbed a finger at the desk. "Don't forget who helped you secure your last permit. You have obligations, Becker." Emma carefully placed the tray on a small side table. Her presence might have gone unnoticed if the man hadn't shifted his glare onto her. "Who's this?" he demanded, eyeing her suspiciously. Logan answered before Emma could. "Just staff, bringing tea. Now let's not be rude." The man gave a humorless snort. "Staff, right. Another example of the comfortable bubble you live in, ignoring the real stakes." Emma kept her head lowered, pouring tea into fine porcelain cups. Logan waved her closer, and she brought a cup to each of them. He took his with a murmured, "Thank you," but the visitor barely acknowledged her presence. "You want an alternative plan," Logan repeated, taking a breath. "I'll have my legal team review the original arrangement. We can propose a compromise that mitigates your client's losses." His eyes flicked briefly to Emma, a subtle hint of apology for exposing her to the tension. The visitor inhaled, possibly smelling the faint steam of the tea. He set down his briefcase with a clatter and grabbed the cup, sipping in a gesture that conveyed both annoyance and some grudging acceptance. "All right, but I won't wait forever. Don't think I'm like that Whitmore fellow, all polished suits and polite talk. If you cross me, Becker, you'll regret it." Logan's mouth formed a tight line. "Understood." A heavy silence fell. Emma stepped back, heart pounding. She realized she was watching another realm of Logan's life, where cutthroat associates made demands, where deals hinged on intimidation. And in this environment, her presence was nearly invisible. Yet she recalled how Clarissa had insisted that these outside perceptions mattered. Did they see Emma as a weakness, a sign that Logan was no longer the ruthless businessman they expected? The visitor finally relented, stuffing loose documents into his briefcase. He left with a last pointed glare, not bothering to finish his tea. Once the door slammed behind him, Logan let out a long sigh, pressing his fingers to his temple. Emma lingered, uncertain if she should leave or speak. He noticed her, exhaustion etched into his face. "I'm sorry you had to see that. Are you okay?" She nodded. "Yes, sir. Just worried about you, actually." The words slipped out before she could tame them. His gaze softened. He rubbed the back of his neck, exhaling. Things are complicated right now. A lot of alliances built on precarious terms. Then, with a wry, humorless smile, he added, "And it doesn't help that I'm rethinking my entire approach to life these days. I'm trying to be a better father." Emma felt a swell of compassion. "Henry's happier than I've ever seen him," she ventured. "He's found something he loves. I hope you realize how much that means." Logan nodded, eyes downcast. "I do, and I'm grateful to you for it." He glanced toward the closed door, as if half expecting the man to barge back in. "Sometimes I think about letting it all go, you know. The expansions, the endless boardroom fights. But it's not so simple. The Becker name carries responsibilities." "Henry is your biggest responsibility," Emma said softly, then winced, worried she'd overstepped. Yet Logan didn't bristle. Instead, he stared at her as if her words had struck a chord. After a beat, he gave a faint nod. "You're right. If only the world let me focus on him without all these intrusions." He sighed. "Anyway, thank you, Emma, for stepping in. You've been a steady presence. I value that more than I can say." His voice caught on those last few words, and Emma's heart skipped. She yearned to offer comfort, but the memory of Clarissa's warnings loomed like a specter. If an entanglement threatened his standing, the best help Emma could provide might be to keep her distance, at least publicly. Yet here he was, confiding, seeking some semblance of solace. She opted for caution. "I'm here for Henry," she said, gentling her tone. "For as long as I can be." Logan picked up on her phrasing. "As long as you can be?" He repeated quietly, brow furrowing. He looked as though he might press the issue, but the phone on his desk buzzed, an insistent vibration that shattered the moment. Logan glanced at it and winced. "I have to take this. Emma, we'll talk later. Thank you. Again." Emma nodded, stepping away to gather the untouched tea from the visitor's seat. She exited the study quietly, hearing Logan's muted voice answering the call. With each step down the corridor, she tried to steady the swirl of emotions in her chest. The vow she made to Henry warred with her fear of Clarissa's power, and now a new fear. That each business fiasco drew Logan further from the simple warmth he found at home, and further into a world that saw Emma as a hindrance. Nightfall arrived swiftly, the storm refusing to let up. Rain battered the windows until well past dinner. Henry, sensing the mood, spent the evening in the music room trying to finish learning a new section of the lullaby. Emma joined him briefly, but she was called away to assist in the kitchen and then to handle housekeeping in the East Wing. By the time she returned, Henry was dozing on the piano bench, his small hands limp over the keys. She lightly tapped his shoulder, coaxing him awake. "Bedtime, Henry. Let's get you upstairs." He blinked, rubbing his eyes. "I was hoping Dad would come," he murmured. "I wanted to show him what I learned." Emma helped him stand, feeling a pang on his behalf. "We can do it tomorrow," she soothed. "He's been swamped, but I'm sure he'll be proud when he hears you." Henry nodded, too sleepy to argue. She guided him to his bedroom, tucking him in. Outside, lightning briefly lit the sky, revealing the worried crease in Henry's brow. Emma brushed his hair back, humming a quiet line of the lullaby. Gradually he relaxed, eyes drifting shut. Once she was sure he was asleep, she slipped away. The corridor was dark except for a single lamp. She paused by a window, looking out at the rain-soaked gardens. In the blackness, tree branches whipped in the wind, the occasional flicker of lightning illuminating them like ghostly silhouettes. She thought of Logan, how exhausted he'd looked. She thought of Clarissa's threats. And she thought of Henry, struggling not to feel abandoned. Somewhere in the hush of the storm-tossed night, Emma decided that if she could provide stability for Henry, even for a short while, she would. That might mean quietly enduring Clarissa's hostility, and it might mean letting Logan handle his battles alone. But if Henry's happiness had become the heart of this household, then Emma would play her part to keep that heart beating. With a sigh, she made her way back to her own quarters, the thunder's rumble echoing down the halls. The storm outside gave no sign of abating, and she suspected the storms within the Becker Empire were much the same. Yet in the back of her mind, a small, stubborn flicker of hope remained, that somehow, amid the chaos, a child's music and a father's yearning for change could weather even the harshest gale, and maybe, just maybe, so could Emma. Morning broke in a haze of lingering mist and scattered rain showers. The storm had lost most of its ferocity overnight, but the damage was done. Fallen branches littered the Becker estate's driveway, and large puddles gleamed on the lawns. Indoors, the atmosphere felt similarly disheveled. Staff moved about with subdued efficiency, aware that something intangible had changed in the house. Emma rose with the dawn light, dressing quickly and heading downstairs. She passed a few maids discussing the debris in the gardens and overheard the butler muttering about scheduling groundskeepers for immediate cleanup. None of it seemed unusual, but the tension from the prior days still weighed on everyone's shoulders. In the kitchen, she found Henry at the table, finishing a bowl of cereal. His face lit at the sight of her. "Morning, Emma. Did you see all the branches outside?" She poured herself a cup of tea. "I saw. Looks like the storm was pretty strong." Lowering her voice, she asked gently, "How are you feeling?" Henry shrugged. "Better. I slept okay after you tucked me in. Dad came by late, maybe midnight. I was half asleep, but he kissed my forehead and whispered goodnight." He blushed slightly, as if such small affection embarrassed him. Emma's heart squeezed. "That's good. He cares about you a lot, Henry." She debated whether to say more, then decided a little reassurance might help. "Things are complicated for grown-ups, especially someone like your father who has a big business to run. But I know he's trying to be there for you." Henry nodded. "I know. I just wish he didn't have so many people yelling at him." He toyed with his spoon. "Anyway, can we practice later? I learned 2 lines of that new piece, and I think I'm almost ready to show Dad." Emma smiled. "Of course. Whenever you're done with breakfast, we can do a quick run-through before I start my chores." They settled into the music room. The sky outside was still gray, but the rain had quieted to a drizzle. Henry's fingers danced over the keys, playing through the lullaby's extended passage. He stumbled a few times, but Emma patiently guided him. Each retry sounded smoother, showing his unwavering dedication. Midway through the practice, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Emma tensed, half expecting Logan or possibly Clarissa. Instead, Lucy's head poked around the door. "Emma," she said, voice urgent, "Mrs. Florence needs you in the guest suite upstairs. A pipe burst or something in the bathroom. There's water leaking." Emma stood, apologizing to Henry. "I have to go. A leak can be serious. Keep practicing. I'll be back." Henry nodded, carefully revisiting the measure they'd just covered. Emma hurried out, following Lucy to the second-floor guest wing. There, the air smelled of damp plaster, and a puddle spread across the bathroom tiles. One of the maintenance staff was already there, turning off the valve. Mrs. Florence oversaw the cleanup, barking orders to soak up water, clear towels, and contact a plumber. Emma helped gather sopping towels and carry them to the laundry cart, all the while her mind drifting back to Henry's progress on the piano. After nearly an hour of cleaning, Emma was finally free to return downstairs. But on her way, she passed Logan's study, hearing low voices within. She paused at the door, almost from habit, then caught herself. Eavesdropping was the last thing she wanted to be caught doing, especially after how Clarissa had branded her as intrusive. Yet the tone of Logan's voice gave her pause. It was hushed, urgent, and tinged with worry. She decided to take the longer route around, avoiding potential accusations. But just as she turned the corner, the door opened, and Logan stepped out, phone in hand. He spotted Emma, eyes briefly widening. For a moment, they both stood in awkward silence. He spoke first, pocketing his phone. "Emma, good morning. Are you all right? You look—" His gaze flicked to the damp towel in her arms. She let out a nervous laugh. "Just dealing with a small flood in the guest suite. Guess the storm was harder on the pipes than we thought." Logan offered a concerned nod. Then his expression shifted, growing more serious. "I wanted to see you anyway, about Clarissa." Emma's pulse surged. She clutched the towel. "What about her?" He glanced down the hallway, ensuring no one overheard. "She called me early this morning. Apparently she wants to schedule a review of staffing. She claims it's to ensure the estate is optimized, but I suspect she's targeting you." His jaw tightened. "I promised to handle it discreetly." Emma's heart sank. The tension she'd tried to brush aside reared its head again. "So, she's still set on removing me?" Logan exhaled, rubbing his temple. "She didn't say it outright, but I know her tactics. She'll likely use some excuse about cost or your lack of experience or anything to spin a narrative that you're not suitable for Henry's well-being. I made it clear it's my household, but she can be persistent, especially if she thinks it impacts my business decisions." Emma forced a calm she didn't feel. "I understand. I thank you for warning me." A flicker of frustration crossed his face. "I hate that you even have to worry about this. You've been nothing but loyal and helpful. And Henry—" He paused, voice softening. "He's grown so attached to you. I can't let her push you out." Her throat constricted. She yearned to reach out, touch his arm, reassure him in some way. But any gesture felt too personal, too charged. "I don't want to cause problems," she murmured. "If my presence jeopardizes things—" "No." He cut her off, unexpectedly fierce. "You're not the problem. I won't let Clarissa bully me or you. He stopped short, noticing the intensity in his own voice. He inhaled, regaining composure. "Let's not dwell on it now. I just wanted you to be aware. Henry's in the music room, right? Maybe I'll go see him before my next call." Emma nodded, relief and worry tangling in her chest. "He'll be thrilled to have you listen to his new passage." A genuine smile flickered over Logan's lips. "Then I'll see him. Thank you, Emma." He walked away, leaving Emma with the damp towel pressed to her stomach. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting his words echo in her mind. "I won't let Clarissa bully me. Or you." It felt like a promise, a vow, but she knew promises were sometimes crushed under corporate realities. Clarissa's machinations wouldn't simply vanish, and Emma couldn't shake the dread that she might be forced out anyway. She returned to the kitchen, depositing the wet towel in the laundry basket. Lucy, who was wiping countertops, shot her a curious glance. "You look flustered again. Trouble with the leak?" Emma forced a small smile. "No, just house drama." She decided not to elaborate. Most of the staff had only vague inklings of the tension involving Clarissa, and Emma wanted to keep it that way if she could. Around noon, Henry found Emma in the hallway, nearly bouncing with excitement. "Emma!" he burst out. "Dad came and listened to me play. He said I'm almost ready for a mini performance, like a real piece I can show guests." Emma's stress lifted momentarily. "That's fantastic, Henry," she said, beaming at his enthusiasm. "You must have impressed him." Henry nodded. "He wants me to keep practicing and, maybe we'll record a video to send Grandma's sister. I've never talked to her much, but apparently she loves music. Dad said it might be nice to share." Emma felt a rush of joy on Henry's behalf. "See? You're already making waves, and I bet you'll inspire your great-aunt. Keep at it." He grinned widely, then darted off, presumably to the music room again. Emma watched him go, heart warm. If nothing else, Henry's progress remained a bright spot in these uncertain times. But the day's fragile peace cracked mid-afternoon when, to no one's surprise, Clarissa's sleek car pulled up the driveway. Emma learned of her arrival through a hushed conversation with Lucy, who'd greeted Clarissa at the door. The woman swept in, ignoring Lucy's polite attempts to offer tea or hang up her coat. She marched straight toward Logan's study. Shortly after, the door closed with a resounding thud. Emma tried to go about her tasks, but each passing minute weighed on her. She wiped shelves in the sitting room, refolded linens in the hallway cupboard, checked on the flowers in the dining room, anything to stay busy. Yet anxiety gnawed at her, picturing Clarissa pressing Logan about the staff review, about Emma's role and influence. Finally, curiosity and apprehension overcame her. She made a cautious loop through the house, passing by the corridor outside the study. She was careful not to linger, but she heard raised voices within, Clarissa's clipped tones, Logan's firm rebuttals. She caught her name once or twice, Emma and Henry, which quickened her pulse. Clarissa was indeed making her move. After nearly half an hour, the door flung open. Clarissa emerged, heels clacking on the floor, face stormy. She paused upon spotting Emma at the corridor's far end, where Emma was ostensibly dusting a framed painting. A cold smile curved Clarissa's lips. Without invitation, she strode closer. Emma gripped her feather duster, heart pounding. "So," Clarissa said, low enough that others passing by might not overhear, "it appears you've become quite indispensable to Henry." She eyed Emma with feigned admiration. "Logan defends you vehemently. But tell me, is this your strategy? Winning the child's heart so the father can't fire you?" Emma's breath caught. "I have no strategy," she replied softly, voice shaking. "I only care about Henry's well-being." Clarissa gave a dismissive snort. "Spare me the saintly act. We both know how easily maids can angle for more. Money, status, a role in the family. It's cliché." Emma's face heated. She forced a steady tone. "You misunderstand. My bond with Henry is about music and mentorship, nothing else." Clarissa leaned in, a cruel glint in her eye. "Mentorship, is it? Because from where I stand, you're a distraction. Encouraging Logan to spend his time fussing over a piano rather than focusing on the empire he built. Let me be clear. If this continues to hamper his decision-making or tarnish his image, I will do whatever is necessary to remove you from the picture." Emma swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. "You keep talking about an empire, but Henry is his son, and—" "Don't preach to me about family," Clarissa snapped, eyes flashing. "It was I who propped Logan's business up when he hit obstacles. I who ensured the Becker name stayed afloat through scandal. Henry is just the next heir, and I won't let him derail or humanize Logan too much. Our investors prefer the ruthless side of him." Emma felt a surge of protectiveness. "You talk like Henry is irrelevant. Just an heir, not a real child with real needs." Clarissa scoffed. "He's a child, yes, but he'll inherit a world that demands power, not sentimentality. Logan must realize that indulging Henry's hobbies, especially facilitated by a mere maid, sends the wrong message. Now, you can make this easier on everyone by leaving voluntarily, or I can orchestrate your dismissal." Emma's throat burned. She could barely contain her trembling. But she thought of Henry's smile, his determination to learn each note. She thought of Logan's exhausted gratitude. Gathering her courage, she forced her gaze to meet Clarissa's. "I'm not leaving," she said, voice quiet but resolute. "Henry's music lessons matter to him. Maybe more than you realize. I won't abandon him unless Mr. Becker himself tells me to." Clarissa studied her for a long moment, lips pursed. Then she gave a humorless chuckle. "Your conviction is quaint. Let's see how long it lasts." With that, she turned on her heel, stalking away with swift, angry steps. Emma stood rooted in place, breathing unevenly. Her legs felt like jelly. She half expected Logan to appear, but the corridor was empty. Slowly, she slipped into a nearby side room, sinking onto a small sofa. She pressed a hand to her chest, fighting the tears that threatened. Despite her trembling, a spark of pride flickered. She had refused to cower before Clarissa's intimidation, but at what cost? She remembered Logan's assurance. "I won't let Clarissa bully me, or you." Would he still hold that line if she escalated her efforts? Emma's mind swirled with potential outcomes. One thing was certain: Clarissa was now explicitly threatening her job. And if she pulled enough strings, Emma wasn't sure Logan could shield her entirely. His corporate alliances might force him to compromise. With a ragged sigh, Emma pushed herself off the sofa and composed her features. Henry was likely in the music room, oblivious to the confrontation. She resolved to keep up a calm front around him. No sense scaring the boy with adult problems. And she clung to a fragile hope that Logan's resolve wouldn't falter, that Henry's progress would be enough to convince him to keep Emma by his side, no matter what storms Clarissa unleashed. Outside, the rain had ceased, but the skies remained ominously gray. The estate, too, seemed caught in a tense lull, a calm before a final downpour of conflict. Emma steadied her heart and walked back into the hallway, determined to stand firm for Henry's sake, however precarious her position might be. The sky remained ominous and gray well into the next day, as though the estate itself were holding its breath for whatever might happen next. Despite the chill air and heavy atmosphere, life within the Becker mansion went on. Staff busied themselves polishing the crystal chandeliers, gathering fallen branches from the yard, and tidying every nook and cranny for potential visitors. After Clarissa's latest threats, Emma worked with a knot of dread lodged in her stomach, but she pressed on, knowing Henry was counting on her presence. By mid-morning, Henry had once again claimed the music room. He perched on the bench, flipping through the lullaby's final lines. His determination to learn it completely was unwavering, spurred by Logan's recent praise. Emma found him that way, hunched over the piano, lightly humming the melody under his breath. "Good morning, Henry," she said quietly, stepping inside. He looked up, beaming despite the gloom outside. "Emma, I was hoping you'd come. I got stuck on this chord progression. I'm mixing up my right hand fingering." She approached, setting aside her dust cloth. "All right, let's see." She gently guided his hands into place, showing how to tuck the thumb under gracefully. For a few minutes they repeated the passage, Henry's frustration easing as he gradually nailed the transition. "That's better," he murmured, brow furrowed in concentration. "If I keep practicing, I could show Dad the finished piece tomorrow." Emma nodded, smiling warmly. "I'm sure he'd love to hear it. You've come a long way." Henry grinned, then let the chord trail off, turning serious. "Emma, I overheard Dad talking on the phone this morning. He sounded worried about money and deals again. Is everything going to be okay?" Emma's heart sank. "Your father is juggling a lot, Henry, but I believe he'll figure it out. He's strong that way." She didn't want to lie or sugarcoat too much, yet Henry's eyes pleaded for reassurance. He exhaled a small sigh, returning his fingers to the keys. "I just hope all this business stuff doesn't stop him from hearing me play, and from letting you stay around." He cast a sidelong glance at her. "I heard some staff saying Clarissa might do a staff review. Does that mean you could leave?" Emma's pulse spiked. She forced calm into her voice. "It's complicated, Henry, but nothing's decided. Right now, I'm here, and that's what matters, okay?" He gave a shaky nod, resuming the lullaby's final bars. Emma drifted in and out of the music room all day, balancing her official chores with guiding Henry whenever she was free. She noticed Logan only once, catching sight of him striding purposefully down the second-floor hallway with his phone glued to his ear. He didn't spot her, and she felt a pang of concern for how weary he looked, shoulders tense beneath his tailored suit. Shortly after noon, Lucy approached Emma with a whisper of new gossip. They say Clarissa scheduled a big meeting tomorrow afternoon in the main lounge. Something about organizational structure and which staff are truly necessary. Mrs. Florence is in a state, says we need to have everything perfect. Do you think she's targeting you? Emma's stomach twisted. Could be. She's definitely not fond of me. She tried to keep her voice even. I'll face it when the time comes. Lucy bit her lip. I'm rooting for you, you know. You've been so good with Henry. It'd be a shame if all this ended. She gave Emma's hand a supportive squeeze, then hurried off to help the butler with a shipment of supplies. That evening, Emma tried to slip away for a moment of quiet. She found her steps leading to the mansion's old library, an often deserted corner with towering shelves of dusty books. Letting herself in, she inhaled the scent of aging pages and leather bindings, the hush soothing her nerves. She missed the simple solace of reading, something she hadn't had much time for since joining the household. Gently, she ran a finger along a row of titles, scanning for something that might catch her eye. A battered volume on classical composers nearly toppled, and when she caught it, a slip of paper fluttered out. Curious, she crouched to pick it up. The slip bore a few bars of handwritten musical notation. The ink was faded, the lines shaky, but the notes formed a gentle, haunting melody. Tucked beneath the notation was a scrawled name, L. Becker. It startled Emma to realize these might be Logan's own scribbles, or possibly his mother's or father's. Something from the family's past attempts at composition? She stood, holding the slip with care. If it was indeed Logan's piece from his youth, perhaps Henry would find it interesting. Then again, it might dredge up memories Logan preferred not to revisit. Emma hesitated, uncertain what to do. Ultimately, she tucked the note into the back of the book for safekeeping, telling herself she might mention it to Logan if a moment of honest conversation ever presented itself. That night, dinner was subdued. Logan joined Henry at the long dining table, but conversation remained thin, overshadowed by the threatened review Clarissa planned. Emma served their plates, feeling the tension coil with each passing minute. Logan's jaw clenched whenever Henry mentioned the music lesson, though he tried to respond kindly. Emma wondered if he was bracing for a final confrontation with Clarissa that might force him to make painful choices. After the meal, Henry dashed off to practice his lullaby a little more. Emma started clearing dishes, stacking them onto a rolling cart. She was nearly done when Logan approached quietly, reaching out to grab a plate from her hands. "Let me help," he offered, though his tone was weary. She blinked, not used to seeing him handle household chores, but acquiesced. Together, they placed the silverware on the cart. The large dining room felt cavernous and lonely around them. "You look exhausted," Emma said softly, glancing at him. "I'm worried." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's been a day. A few calls with investors went sour. And Clarissa, she's determined to hold that staff review tomorrow. I tried to postpone it, but she claims it's urgent. Something about restructuring to ensure maximum efficiency." Emma's heart beat faster. "I see." Logan set a fork on the cart, expression grim. "I won't let her turn this into an excuse to dismiss you, Emma. You have my word." She swallowed, tears threatening. "Thank you," she whispered. "But if it jeopardizes your bigger goals..." His gaze snapped to hers. "You and Henry aren't secondary to my bigger goals." The intensity of his voice sent a jolt through her. Then he caught himself, lowering his tone. "I mean, I'd rather lose a deal than lose what little normalcy Henry has found." Her cheeks warmed, a surge of gratitude mixing with the precarious swirl in her chest. "He's a wonderful boy. I'm just facilitating something he already had inside him." Logan nodded, studying her. "Regardless, you matter, Emma." His eyes flicked to the doorway, as if aware that any staff or Clarissa herself might appear. He exhaled. "Tomorrow, I'll fight for you in that meeting, but I can't promise it'll be pretty." Emma's lip trembled with the weight of unspoken emotions, fear, hope, a flicker of closeness. She managed a nod, not trusting her voice. A moment later, Henry called from somewhere down the corridor, "Dad, Emma, come see this new part I learned." The sound of his voice echoed, an innocent beckoning that cut through the tension. Logan set aside the last dish with a faint smile. "Right, let's go see." Henry's improvement was evident, despite his nerves. He played through the last bars of the lullaby, stumbling only once or twice, quickly recovering each time. Emma stood behind him, offering quiet support. Logan listened, arms folded, face etched with pride and sadness all at once. When Henry struck the final chord, Logan clapped gently. "That was wonderful," he said. "Truly." Henry beamed. "Thanks. Emma helped me figure out the tricky part." Logan's expression grew somber. "You know, Henry, no matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to keep playing. Don't let anything or anyone stop you." Henry frowned, confused. "What do you mean, tomorrow?" Emma and Logan exchanged glances. She cleared her throat. "Your father just means that big decisions might be made. But you'll be fine, Henry." The boy's brow crinkled. "I guess. But Dad, you'll come hear me again, right?" Logan reached out, ruffling Henry's hair. "Always," he promised, though a shadow flickered behind his eyes. After a final review of the piece, Henry yawned wide, exhaustion catching up with him. Emma coaxed him to bed, feeling Logan's gaze on them as they left the music room. It felt like a final calm before some storm, this time not from the skies, but from Clarissa's calculated maneuvers. Morning arrived with a damp chill. The estate staff scurried, ensuring everything was in immaculate condition for Clarissa's review. Word had spread, and tension hung in the air like a thick fog. Lucy commented that the gardens were finally being cleared of storm debris, but the real storm was indoors. Emma spent the early hours cleaning the hallway carpets and helping Mrs. Florence set up a small coffee and pastry station in the lounge, presumably for Clarissa and any other attendants she might bring. It felt like an unsettling performance, the staff preparing for an inquisition that might see one of them, most likely Emma, dismissed. Even Lucy's usual chatter was subdued. At noon, Henry found Emma near the staircase, anxiety flickering in his eyes. "Dad just told me to stay in my room this afternoon. He said it's an adult meeting. That's the review, right?" Emma bent down to meet Henry's gaze. "Yes, it is, but don't fret. Why not practice or read a book? I'll come find you once it's over." He swallowed. "If Clarissa tries to make you leave, can Dad really stop her?" His voice quavered. Emma pressed a hand to his shoulder. She wanted to offer firm assurance, but honesty held her back. "Your dad will do his best. Let's trust him, okay?" Henry's eyes shone with tears. He tried hard to blink away. "Promise you won't just go without saying goodbye?" Her heart broke. "I promise," she said softly, pulling him into a brief hug. Shortly before 1 o'clock, Clarissa arrived, alone this time, wearing a crisp gray suit and a severe expression. She marched straight to the lounge. Logan awaited her there, posture rigid, exuding defiance. Emma took a position in the corridor just beyond, near enough that she might be summoned if needed, but out of direct sight. She wasn't sure if staff were meant to attend or if Clarissa wanted them individually. Mrs. Florence loitered not far away, nerves palpable. For several minutes, Emma heard low voices, the tone shifting from calm remarks to sharper exchanges. The threshold felt like a line between worlds, the sanitized facade of corporate power inside and the watchful staff outside. Then, Clarissa's voice rose enough for Emma to catch fragments. "My prerogative, staff changes, personal attachments interfering." Emma's stomach lurched. She closed her eyes, inhaling to steady herself. She recalled Logan's vow. He'd fight for her. But how far could he push back, especially if Clarissa had leverage? Another voice joined. Mrs. Florence was called in. Emma heard a muffled conversation about the duties of each house employee, the costs, the roles. Some minutes later, the butler was presumably summoned. Emma's heart hammered, certain her turn was coming. Indeed, after a spell of near silence, a clipped voice soared over the tension. "Emma, please come in." Mrs. Florence appeared in the doorway, grim-faced. "They want you now." Emma's pulse thundered in her ears, but she squared her shoulders and stepped inside the lounge. Logan stood by a fireplace, arms crossed. Clarissa sat in a high-backed chair near a small table that displayed coffee cups. The entire space radiated formality. Emma paused before them, hands clasped nervously. Clarissa fixed her with a cool stare. "Emma, we're conducting a thorough review of staff responsibilities and necessity. I'd like to hear from you. What is your role exactly in this household?" Emma swallowed, mustering composure. "I was hired primarily as a maid to help maintain rooms and assist with daily chores," she said evenly. "I also give piano guidance to Henry at Mr. Becker's request." Clarissa's gaze sharpened. "The piano lessons, that's not in any official job description, correct?" Emma's throat felt dry. "No, ma'am. It arose because Henry showed interest. I had some experience with music, so I offered to help with Mr. Becker's approval." Logan cleared his throat, stepping forward. "Which has been a tremendous help," he said. "Henry's thriving." Clarissa didn't break eye contact with Emma. "I see. And do you believe your personal involvement with Henry is necessary, considering we could hire a licensed music tutor or perhaps send him to an academy as many in our circles do?" Emma forced a calm tone, though her heart pounded. "Henry responds well to a supportive presence here at home. I believe continuity matters. He's comfortable learning from someone he trusts." Clarissa nodded slowly, as if feigning thoughtfulness. Continuity, trust. Yes, children do get attached. She glanced pointedly at Logan. The question is whether this arrangement best serves the household's image and goals. Logan bristled. "Clarissa, we're not making decisions based solely on image. Henry's well-being comes first, and Emma is integral to that." Clarissa raised a brow. "Is that your final stance? Because I can cite multiple reasons to streamline staff. Her tasks could be folded into others, or we could hire a single professional tutor part-time, perhaps cheaper in the long run or more specialized." Emma's stomach churned. She felt like a pawn in a power game. But Logan stepped closer, looking Clarissa in the eye. "My final stance is this. Emma stays. Her role with Henry is non-negotiable. If cost is the concern, I'll absorb it personally. This is my house after all." The tension spiked. Clarissa's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. "And the potential rumors? The speculation about your closeness to an employee? Is that also non-negotiable?" Emma stiffened. She didn't dare speak. The question was aimed at Logan. He drew a breath, resolute. "Speculation be damned. I won't sacrifice Henry's happiness to placate gossip. Emma is essential to him. That's where I stand." Silence hung. Clarissa's face hardened with a flicker of anger. Emma held her breath, bracing for the final blow. But then Clarissa exhaled, her expression morphing into a tight, businesslike mask. "Fine," she said curtly. "If you insist on retaining her, it's on you to manage any repercussions. My official recommendation was to release her from service. Be mindful of that if this backfires in any way." Logan nodded stiffly. "Understood." Clarissa glanced at Emma with a dismissive flick of her eyes. "You may go. We'll finalize the rest of the staff review separately." Emma murmured a thank you and slipped out, head spinning. She was still employed, apparently. Relief warred with dread. Clarissa might have backed off for now, but she remained a threat. Emma ducked into the hallway, leaning against the wall, struggling to process the swirl of adrenaline. Moments later, the lounge door opened and Clarissa brushed past. She spared Emma a single scathing look before clicking down the corridor. A few staff parted to let her pass, exhaling once she was gone. Finally, Logan emerged. He looked worn, a sheen of tension in his eyes, but a faint smile tugged at his lips. "It's done, for the moment," he said under his breath. "She has to accept it." Emma's pulse thundered, tears threatening. "You fought for me," she whispered. "Thank you." He inhaled shakily. "I'd do it again. Henry needs you, and I need you to know you matter, Emma." His voice caught, laden with emotions he didn't fully articulate, but the message was clear. Before either could say more, staff began bustling around them, clearing away the lounge's coffee setup. The corridor was too public for deeper confessions. Emma forced a smile. I should check on Henry. He'll be worried." Logan nodded, stepping back. "Yes, go. I'll finalize a few details with Clarissa's notes and meet you later." As Emma headed to find Henry, the echoes of that confrontation still vibrated in her chest. For now, it seemed she was safe, her place in the household secure. But Clarissa's parting glare had promised that this war wasn't truly over. Emma silently vowed that, come what may, she'd remain here as long as Henry needed her. And from the look in Logan's eyes, he was prepared to shield her from future storms, even if it meant standing alone against those who demanded he compromise. A warm amber glow bathed the Becker mansion 2 days later as dusk settled over the estate. In stark contrast to the turbulent skies and storms of the past week, the weather had finally brightened. A gentle breeze carried the scent of late-blooming roses, and the setting sun's rays lit the windows with a soft luminescence. Despite the recent battles over Emma's place in the household, an air of cautious optimism pervaded the corridors. In the music room, Henry set up the final pages of his lullaby, carefully flattening the edges of the sheet music. Candles flickered from a small side table, the lamp above the piano muted to create a cozy glow. Emma stood by his side, gently reviewing the notes with him. She couldn't help noticing that the boy's posture was straighter, his confidence higher. He'd poured so much time and passion into mastering this piece. Henry glanced at Emma, voice trembling with excitement and nerves. "Dad's really coming to hear me finish it, right?" Emma nodded. "Yes, he's just tying up a final call. He'll be here any minute." Henry exhaled, wiping slightly sweaty palms on his pants. "I can't believe it's done. I mean, I can play the entire lullaby now. It feels big." Emma smiled warmly. "It is big, Henry. You've learned so much. About music, yes, but also about patience and perseverance." He grinned, color flushing his cheeks. "I'm glad you stayed, Emma. I was worried for a while. But Dad told me we won, right? You're not going anywhere?" She paused, a swirl of gratitude and anxiety constricting her chest. "For now it seems Clarissa's backing down. Your father made it clear I belong here." Henry caught the faint reservation in her words. "I'm sorry if it's been rough." Emma reached out, squeezing his shoulder. "It's all right. I'm just happy to see how far you've come." Heavy footsteps approached the corridor, followed by Logan's voice calling, "Henry? Emma?" He stepped into the room, wearing a half-smile that reflected a long but victorious day. His gaze swept over them and the illuminated piano. Henry's face lit up. "Dad? Ready for the full performance?" Logan removed his suit jacket, draping it over a nearby chair. "Absolutely. Could use some beautiful music to end the day." Emma moved aside so that Logan could stand closer to Henry. She lingered behind them, arms folded lightly, watching father and son with a feeling of deep fondness. After so many evenings overshadowed by business demands, it was a relief to see Logan finally able to focus on Henry without glancing anxiously at his phone. The hush in the mansion felt charged with anticipation rather than dread. Henry sat up straight, gave a small nod to Emma, his silent request for a supportive cue, and then let his fingers press the first keys of the lullaby. The opening notes were soft, delicate, echoing like the beginning of a cherished bedtime story. The melody spread through the air, carrying an undercurrent of tenderness that reminded Emma of why she'd chosen to stand firm despite Clarissa's threats. As Henry progressed, the lullaby's gentle, lilting progression grew more complex. A few weeks ago, he could barely navigate half of these notes. Now he played with a steadiness and grace that surprised even him. Every so often he glanced at Emma for reassurance, and she offered him a small, encouraging smile. Logan watched intently, arms folded, not moving a muscle. His eyes shone with an emotion Emma could only interpret as pride mingled with something else, a quiet awe. For so long, the childlike joys of music had been dormant for Logan, overshadowed by board meetings and corporate negotiations. Now it was as though Henry's playing drew him back to a simpler sense of wonder. When Henry reached the final passage, a subtle shift into a minor chord that gave the lullaby a wistful close, he nailed each note. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. The last chord lingered in the air, tender and resonant. For a heartbeat, silence filled the room, as though the entire estate paused to savor the final note. Then Logan clapped softly, his voice low and thick with emotion. "Henry, that was incredible. You've really done it." Henry's cheeks glowed pink, a grin nearly splitting his face. "I did it, Dad, and Emma helped me so much." He spun on the bench, shooting Emma a look of pure gratitude. Emma approached, her own smile brimming with pride. "You did the work. I just showed you where to put your fingers and how to count time. The rest was your dedication." Henry stood, unexpectedly lunging forward to give Emma a tight hug. She returned it, tears pricking her eyes. Over his shoulder, she saw Logan's expression soften into something deeply tender. Eventually, Henry pulled back, bouncing on his toes. "Dad, do you think we could record it on your phone or something, just so we can share it with people who care about us?" Logan nodded. "Absolutely. I'll do it tomorrow, in good light." He ruffled Henry's hair. "Right now, though, it's probably time for bed. Big day of practicing for your next piece, right?" Henry groaned good-naturedly. "Fine, but only if Emma teaches me something new by next week." Emma laughed. "I'm sure we can pick another piece. We'll celebrate your success tonight." With that, Henry dashed off, presumably to brush his teeth and replay the lullaby in his mind. Emma watched him go, heart brimming. Then she turned back to Logan, who remained near the piano, fingertips grazing the keys. For a moment they simply stood there, side by side, as though words failed them. Emma finally ventured, "He's growing up so fast. You must be proud." Logan's gaze flicked to her. The faint lamplight revealed a mixture of warmth and lingering caution. "I am, and I'm grateful, both for Henry's sake and my own. I'd nearly forgotten how music can bring us together in ways business never will." Emma let her hand drift across the top of the piano, feeling the instrument's smooth finish. She remembered the battered old upright that had started this entire journey. "I think Henry awakened a part of you too," she said quietly. "You used to play, right?" He nodded, a distant sadness shadowing his face. "Yes, when I was a boy. My mother encouraged me, but after she passed, my father insisted I focus on real pursuits. I lost track of the piano, got pulled into the family business. Then life became about money, deals, expansions. I told myself it was for Henry's future, but I never realized I was shutting him out." He paused, swallowing. "Until you came along." Emma's cheeks warmed. "I just did what felt right. He was lonely, and the piano was sitting there gathering dust." Logan reached out, tentatively brushing his hand against Emma's fingers where they rested on the piano. The gentle contact sparked electricity through her, a reminder of the unspoken bond they'd forged behind closed doors. "You didn't just help Henry," he said softly. "You reminded me there's more to life than contracts and acquisitions." A short pause. "And that I don't have to face every battle alone." She felt her throat tighten. "Logan, The swirl of emotions, gratitude, affection, lingering fear of Clarissa, tangled her words. He gave a wry half-smile. Clarissa will still try to meddle. I can't guarantee she won't cause trouble again. But for now, I've drawn a line. She knows Henry's well-being is where I won't compromise. Emma nodded, trying to breathe past her fluttering heart. She recalled Clarissa's last glare, the way she'd basically threatened them both. I just worry about what that might cost you, she murmured. She's powerful in your circles. If your brand or your image gets tarnished... Logan's hand slid fully over hers, a subtle yet unmistakably personal gesture. If my brand can't withstand me being a father who supports his son's music, then maybe I don't want that brand anyway. As for the rest, I'll handle it. Emma's breath caught, tears glistening in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, voice shaky, for protecting Henry and for standing up for me. He squeezed her fingers gently. You're part of the reason Henry's found happiness, and I'm starting to realize you're part of my happiness too. His voice lowered, an unsteady vulnerability surfacing. I know the difference in our positions. I know how it looks. But I also know that in this house you've shown me what truly matters. Emma's heart pounded with a confusing mix of joy and apprehension. She could feel the invisible lines. Employer and employee, high society and humble staff, father and caretaker. Yet the longing in Logan's eyes matched the warmth that had been growing in her for weeks. Logan, she managed, her voice trembling slightly, I care for you, and Henry means the world to me, but I don't want to complicate things if... He shook his head, freeing her from any further protest. Life is already complicated. Perhaps we can make space for something genuine within it. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor, Henry returning carrying a sheet of music. He froze, seeing them close together, hands touching. Emma and Logan quickly separated, though not in a flurry of guilt but in a gentle understanding. Henry blinked, curiosity flashing in his gaze, but he said nothing about their closeness. Dad, can I show Emma the next piece I want to learn? Henry asked, bounding into the room. Logan cleared his throat, stepping back politely. Of course, buddy. Emma and I were just discussing scheduling. Emma forced a light smile. Yes, scheduling. Let's see that piece. Henry thrust the sheet forward, an upbeat tune with whimsical runs. It's called Morning's Light. Kinda perfect to learn after finishing a lullaby, right? Emma nodded, glancing at the page. It's a bit more challenging, but I think you can handle it. Logan hovered, observing their interaction. The contentment on his face was impossible to miss. There, under the soft glow of the piano lamp, father and son found a sense of closeness that no contract or business arrangement could replicate. And Emma, though still wearing a maid's uniform, was now woven into that closeness, not as a mere employee, but as a beacon of warmth they all needed. Later that night, Emma returned to her small bedroom feeling oddly light, despite the day's intensity. She sat on the edge of her bed, hearing the hush of the corridors, aware that the future remained uncertain. Clarissa still lurked in the background, the business world still demanded Logan's focus, and rumors could swirl. Yet for the moment, she was allowed to stay, Henry's teacher, Logan's unexpected ally. She leaned over to the nightstand where she'd placed a short stack of personal belongings. Among them was the battered volume of classical composers from the library, inside which she'd found that slip of original notation. Gently, Emma pulled out the slip, studying the faint bars of melody scrawled under the name L. Becker. A pang of curiosity and tenderness stirred in her. Perhaps this was something Logan composed in his youth. Perhaps the seed of music he once nurtured was still there, waiting to blossom again in a new stage of life. Hugging the slip to her chest, Emma closed her eyes. She allowed herself a quiet, private dream. That one day father and son would perform a duet, playing not only the lullaby Henry learned, but also the half-forgotten piece that Logan once wrote. She pictured their hands on the keys, side by side, capturing the legacy and love that so many in their circles would overlook or dismiss. And maybe, just maybe, she would be there too. Not as an outsider, but as someone they both needed and cherished. The tumult of storms passed and the burdens of corporate obligations would never vanish entirely. But through Henry's music, they had found a reason to protect something fragile, earnest, and real. If love could bloom in the hush of an old piano room, then perhaps it could weather every threat Clarissa might conjure. With that thought, Emma fell into a soft sleep, comforted by the lullaby that still echoed in her mind, a testament to what faith, hope, and gentle guidance could achieve in a world too often shaped by power and ambition. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, Henry's final chord hung in the mansion's silence like a promise of better days. And in that promise, Emma dared to let her heart soar, believing that even in the grand halls of the Becker Empire, there was room for her to belong. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.